Can you hear us? Okay, so we're good now? Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, so Andrea would like to move Community Engagement Committee from the consent agenda for discussion in the regular meeting agenda. And we will put that
14.3.
14.3. And I would like to pull joint city, school boards, and that will be 14.4. Any else? Tina, can you please allow me to see who's online? Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, so if there's no objection, these consent items will be adopted. Any objections? Okay, consent agenda is adopted as amended. Now we move on to approval of the agenda. Are there any amendments needed to the agenda? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve, please? Andrea, all in favor? So carried. And approval of the minutes. There are no errors or omissions in the minutes of the regular meeting of October 22nd, 2024. It is recommended that the minutes be approved by the board. Craig.
On page 4 under highlights. And it probably should be PSBA meeting as well, I believe, right?
Thank you, Craig. Anything else? Can I have a motion to approve the October 22nd minutes, please? Christina? Oh, sorry. Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the October 22nd minutes, please? Jenny, all in favor? So carried. Yes. Oh. You can't abstain. Okay. Thank you. All right, now we will move on to approval of the minutes for the meeting of October 29th. Are there any amendments needed? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve, please? Andrea, all in favor? So carried. Thank you. No business arriving from the minutes, so we will move on to Associate Superintendent reports. 8.1, business and operations. Christine.
Okay, well, I'll try and be short because I have a lot of business and operations stuff on the agenda as it is. Under facilities, I just want to highlight that West Cooley Station had what I call the heart of the school installed last week. The big mechanical unit was craned in and was put into place, and they've had the parking lot paved. So we're still well on track. They've started purchasing items for the school, technology. I know they've been working on supply orders, and Dean's been doing lots of work. He's been doing lots of engagement work with families and community engagement evening with parents at Colbanks related to the Spanish Trilingual program coming up next week, and so there's a lot of work being there. Galbraith modernization. Last week, there are lots of holes drilled into the school site, doing some geotechnical work that is required in order for us to assess the quality of the land for the modernization, because we will be doing an addition / demolition as part of that modernization, and so that a lot of work's going there, and they've started some of the design process in this month for Galbraith, so well underway. Finance, well, of course, we have our audit report and our budget report this month, but one of the other things going on in finance is this year we embarked on a new project, working to move school bank accounts. So we have, like, every school has a little bank account for their school generated funds, moving them to central office as part of our accounting system. So there's one account, and so we started with the elementary schools. And what this does is it is one account. The school secretaries don't have to worry about some of the transactions in relation to bank reconciliations and sort of thing. The bank rec's all done by the facility department. It just gives them just one less thing those school secretaries have to worry about, because they have to worry about a lot. So far, it's going well. All checks are written out of Ed Center. Payments are still processed the way they normally would be for school generated funds, but it just gives more standards and again streamlines the operation. So we're trying it out with elementary this year, see how it goes, and then we will then move to work with the middle schools and high schools. Transportation, as always, we're reminding our parents and families to be careful because it's cold weather season. Sometimes delays in busing can happen, so making sure that we're just being weather aware and not leaving our kids outside in the cold and just being, we have, of course, a system where you can track the bus delays and that, so you're aware what's going on. Technology, there's always lots going on in technology, some exciting stuff happening. Galt Museum has a whole display dedicated to gameplay, talking about the history of gaming as well as esports. And, you know, we're pretty lucky they've got a display kind of dedicated to our kids in esports. They had an esports day at the Galt on November 8th, which understanding was very, very well attended. Excited to announce there's a new dual credit course, introduction to esports, in conjunction with Bull Valley College, that our high school students can participate. There's only 10 spots. I haven't checked to see if that's filled up yet, but that is going to start from February to May, and so there is a link there if you want to learn more about it. So that's an exciting opportunity for 10 of our students to participate as a dual credit opportunity. And as you'll see in the board priorities report, I'm really proud because our technology staff not only just, manage our systems and look after, computers and all the things that we need to use technology for, but they really get out in the schools and support our schools. And so you'll see in board report that we have our technology department's been out supporting 3D workshops, helping students rebuild computers, so taking old computers apart and doing some rebuilding, and then also learning programming. So we're building, they're helping to support future technology innovators through that participation. So it's really nice to see. And then, as mentioned last month, but I wanted to put the picture of the award in my report this year as a big congratulations again to Jesse Sedlowski for being honored with the Pillar Award from ATLE. And that's really a testament. He does a lot of work provincially, shares a lot of best practices with other school boards. And so it was really a great honor to be recognized by your peers for the leadership that you're providing in your field. So say always, this is that time of year, walk like a penguin. So can't say it enough. It does work. I think in Edmonton, we were walking to and from ASBA in some slippery sidewalks, and it warmed my heart when we started walk like a penguin. So, and that's about it.
Excellent. Thank you, Christine. Any questions for Christine? Andrea.
Congratulations to Jesse. Thanks for relaying that. And I just had a question about the amalgamation of this elementary accounts. So what is the procedure then to get money out of the accounts when needed?
Well, they would send in requisition through the Ed Center, and then we write the checks for them. So there's a process for them to get us to cut the checks.
And that works probably seamlessly.
Yeah, it's working really good. Yeah.
And so all of it is in one account, or they're still
it's
labeled?
in one account, but each school has a special code. The bank has set up a special code so we can track it separately, so we know what schools, like for instance with deposits and things like that. So that's how we're able to separate the schools through one bank account.
Thank you.
Craig.
I do. Actually, the Auditor General released their report. That's actually related to assurance plans. It's not financial. It's actually, they took a look at the 2021, 2022 assurance plans for school boards and did a dive on to, are they meeting certain metrics that an Auditor General would think you should have in an assurance plan? And so there's recommendations in there. It's when we first got the letter, it looked like, is it a financial thing? But no, it turns out, and it is posted on the Auditor General's website, their recent report that they did. And then it's that those recommendations are within that report. Yeah.
Allison.
Thank you. My question as well is in regards to the finance piece with the finance administration working through central office. Many school councils have been encouraged to have the schools running their banking. Is that what this would be? And then I have a couple more questions.
Well, it's all the school generated funds. So yes, if each schools are set up, they've got several accounts for like every activity that's in the account, every fundraiser that's in the account. And so school council would have their own set of GLs as well within that account. And it's just, yeah, the banking's all done in one bank account, and we track it through the school through the school cash, as well as then on our side as the main system.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for them to get a check when they're running like hot lunches and stuff, they would need to be getting that through the
they would
division
they would
office.
go through their school, and their school would get them what they need. Yeah.
Okay. Knowing that this was the first time that I had seen this or knew this, I'm just curious in terms of transparency to school councils and how this would be being communicated to school councils when they were encouraged to close their bank accounts and go this route. So I'm just wondering what that communication is going to look like.
So this has actually been in the works since last May, and so it was started with school administrators and the schools. And so because it directly involves the schools, we would not be directly communicating with school councils about this, because this is about how the schools account for their school accounting.
So are you able to support schools to be doing that communication with school councils?
If they need to, yeah, it's all part of the school generated funds and how we run I guess the question is, how much do we involve school councils in our day-to-day operations? Because this is a day-to-day operations decision.
So when school councils are using those funds, I think just for that transparency piece, I just don't understand where there would be a roadblock to having that transparency, and I would.
Oh no, there's no roadblock.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I just don't understand. Yeah. We can certainly, if a school wants us to help us explain that, we can absolutely do that for sure. We've got people who are like that. Again, I'm not intimately involved with it. That would be Avis and Luana, but certainly if school councils want more information on that, we can certainly provide it. But we haven't had that request.
Thank you. Any other questions? Jenny?
I just had some of the same questions along some of the same lines, because those are the questions I get a lot from our community members, is around finance with the piece for school councils. And so with these school generated funds being centralized, do these school councils, like you explained, that each of the schools then has a code, it sounds like, that they're able to deal with their own finances within that generalized account? Do the school councils also then have a separate code?
It would be all part of how the school sets up their school generated funds. And so there would be a separate GL account related to, it's a general ledger account, because like, for instance, for each type of activity, volleyball, however the school sets it up. And if there's an area for school council, like it's no different than what we've done in the past. We've just taken away the school having a bank account, and it's now handled in a central bank account. Everything else operates the same as it did in the past. They can report out individually. The school can run reports on school council's revenue expenses if they're running it through the school as they normally would. Nothing's changed for how we handle the reporting side. It's just a bank account, and whether they do not, and so the schools don't have to actually track the revenue expenses in a separate bank account. It's done through the Ed Center, but all the reporting is the same. There's no difference.
Sorry that I'm not fully grasping it.
Well, it may not be the best one to maybe I can get explain it to you. Maybe that's a question we can ask her when she's here. How about that? Because Avis is intimately, yeah, let's get her to respond to it. How's that?
Sure, I'll just
Yeah.
clarify what my question is I think that from my understanding, attending school councils is a lot of them closed their societies and then no longer held their own bank accounts and instead held bank account through the school. And the school often, it sounded like, held a separate bank account for the school council. So they had their own, and then they had an additional bank account that was for the school council, and they received those bank statements and interactions. And so I think that's the piece that I'm asking about is how does that school council then get the reporting of their finances specifically?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways. Some school councils have separate bank accounts, which they can certainly do. Some school councils have chosen to have the school look after all the banking, all the transactions and everything without having the school council do that. If they're doing it through the school can run reports. Again, that has not changed in years. If the school's handling it, they can run the same reports. That's not any different. School council wants to have their own bank account. And the problem with that is you have people change, authorities change over. You have, again, not the same amount of controls, internal controls that we have as the division. A society is a total different thing. The society has to have its own bank account and the division is hands off from a society because it is a separate legal entity. So there's three different things. But certainly when Avis is here, she can give you the more nuances of it. Again, she knows exactly how that thing runs technically. I don't technically involved in the accounting system anymore. They've locked me out. With good reason for controls.
Perfect. Thank you, Christine. Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much for your report. All right. Now we will move on to 8.2 instructional services. Jackie.
Perfect. Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me join you. I really appreciate the opportunity and I'm excited to share with you what we do in DIS. So to begin, I wanted to share one thing that Rochelle was focused on this year at early learning education. They had an opportunity to go to Helen Schuler Nature Center and partner with them to provide transportation for our families to take part in something called Loose Parts Outdoor Play. So Loose Parts Outdoor Play is an open-ended, very creative process to allow children just to explore with materials that are not manufactured materials. They're very just environmental and real. So it just allows that really abstract kind of open-ended play-based learning. So that was an amazing opportunity that our early learning kids had, and also really well attended. So there was 2 days, they were weather impacted, one of them especially, but the second day it had well over 20 kids at each session. So that was really exciting for our early learners. Moving into our learning and instruction with Erin Herkett, we had our collaborative communities in November, and we had over 90 groups that were formed as part of professional learning opportunities for our teachers. So again, a great opportunity for our staff who really embrace learning next to other colleagues that have a similar focus. So that was a great opportunity for our teachers. For our mental health capacity building team, with Deanna. It was exciting to hear that working with the City of Lethbridge, they've secured their funds for up to 2026. So that's another great and exciting piece of news for our team. With Andrew Cruel, our off-campus education, tomorrow, actually, November 27th, is our Trades for You. So our grades 9 to 12 students who are interested are able to try some skilled trades with up to 30, there's 30 different businesses within our community who are open to that opportunity with our students. So lots of excitement around that. Andrew said it's almost as exciting as landing tickets to a Taylor Swift concert to be at the Trades for You evening. So we're very excited about it. Our counseling coordinator, Jen Day, she's been very busy, and she, along with Jim Kerr, Kaylee King, and Don Riolini, carried out our Vitra training this past week with approximately 30 people being trained. So within our division, we also had some community representation there. So McMahon, the Y, and Calvin Christian School. So they were able to join us for that training because it's something that's valuable for our community too. For our Indigenous education team with Joel Tailfeathers, one thing in November, they're working on focusing on the Blackfoot value of empathy. But they also had an opportunity to go up to Calgary and learn a little bit more about Indigenous leadership classes in high school. And so just looking at what that could look like here, they visited 2 high schools up in Calgary and are excited to bring that back and share that with our high schools. Jim has been really busy also with Success in School planning. So Success in School plans are for our kids in care. So he connects with the teams and makes sure there's student voice in those pieces too, because that's essential to a Success in Schools plan, to make sure they have a voice in their learning and how they feel things are going. So he's been following up on all of those. And also a big focus for us last year and then also going into this year is just student engagement and looking at attendance. So Jim's been pretty focused on middle and high schools, especially looking at how are we going to engage our students who aren't attending. And I think there's also a big focus on just sharing that data so that they are familiar. And lots of our principals are aware, right, of what kids were missing, but how to bring those kids back into school and get them really excited about things. Okay, so then the inclusive education, myself and Rebecca Adamson, I have 3 things to share that are a little bit big. So the first one is just some of the things that we've been doing, being really flexible with our behavior support team. And I think that's been really critical in what we are experiencing in classrooms. So just getting very creative with our programming, but also being flexible with what our behavior support team does. So typically they're on a rotation of 4 different schools, so they circle back to the schools. And right now we have to also kind of just flex with that. When we have needs, then we make sure they're supported with our behavior support teacher also. So that's been working very well. The other piece that I wanted to share was our immigrant youth conversations. So this is a big piece that's bringing community together with the school division. So we have voices from the Y, LFS, the city of Lethbridge, flexibility, and we've all come together because we are realizing we see the same gaps that our students are experiencing and finding as challenges and barriers. So we've come together to look at everything from transportation to interpretation and translation and making sure that their needs are being met. So that has been such an amazing group to work with. And we're already even making movement on some summer planning for our students who are newcomers to Canada. And then, of course, our Inclusive Education Parent Advisory Committee, we're starting to work on the structure for that. Next week, I'm meeting with a lady named Megan from Parkland School Division. So I have met with her before in the past, but just to kind of reconnect around their procedure for how they created their committee, their terms of reference, and also their application. So looking at all of those different pieces, with her to kind of get a good idea of how we want to get ours off the ground and running. And then the last thing I did want to share too is just how Rebecca and I are working through assessing our ISP, our instructional support plans, and how we can engage families and students more in that process. And that has been fantastic. So it's spinning off of the feedback we received from our parents at our roundtable in the spring, taking that information and working really closely with our learning support teachers and the administrators that oversee inclusive education. And we had one group from, can I say the school? I think I can. Patterson that was really excited to share their success with parent engagement this year. So they took part in a survey and sent it out to their families and found of about just over 200 ISPs, they had about 120 parents that responded. And so they shared with our team just how successful that was and how it contributed to the creation of our ISPs. So it was great to share that. And I think lots of schools are excited to move forward in that area. And Rebecca and I have also been meeting with other tech groups to understand what they're able to offer for ISPs and the structure, like the actual format of that. So it's just something that it's great to get eyes on different ways of doing things and then bringing that back to our parents to see what, and our school leaders to see what that can look like. And then finally, in our digital wellness area, Kaysen and Sydney have been very busy. Tomorrow is their after school special that they're hosting with Healthy Schools Alberta, with the AHS, sorry. And also in January, they'll be sharing at the Shaping the Future conference, which is with Everactive Schools. Sydney also just recently presented at, or kind of shared what we used our grant for with Alberta Education. So that went over really well also. And just to highlight, the team is becoming more visible in pop-up events. So they made sure they had presence at things like Meet the Teacher Night, parent-teacher interviews, and then at Lakeview, there's a games night. So they're going to hang out over there too, just so they can share their message of tech, digital awareness with their students and their families. So that's my DIS report.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jackie.
You're welcome.
Does anyone have a question for Jackie? Andrea.
It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you.
For being here from Morag. Thanks for your support of our Play and Learn kindergarten programs. I always have to get a word in for those, and our specialized EAL programs. Really appreciate that. And I just thought it was a great opportunity while you were here to ask you some, I know you touched on it, but some of the other ways that you support complex classrooms.
Sure.
In our division.
Yeah, absolutely. The word complex is so multifaceted. So I think there's a number of things that we do, whether it's disabilities or medical needs, learning or cognitive needs, language learners, and then we also have behavioral needs in our classrooms. So I did mention our behavior support team, which I think has work to build capacity within others also to support our schools so that they can feel confident and able to take on some of the behavioral challenges that we see in our classrooms. For myself, I do a lot of connecting with administrators who come to me and say, you know, we're really stuck and what can we do? So lots of touch base and follow up, even to the point where they'll share like their scheduling, their timetables, so I can take a peek at it and get creative and try to help problem solve with them there. We do a lot with resources, so looking at everything from technology and assistive technology to physical needs like slings and things for mobility. Also resources like Bridging the Gap for our English for Access programs so that we can help recognizing the need of how to teach reading even at the higher levels. Another piece I think is our inclusive ed meetings. So it's not, we don't call them LST meetings anymore because we do really wanted to emphasize that our vice principals are there also. And we've restructured those so they contain a component of learning together or professional learning and then generative thinking. So really getting their brains together and sharing ideas across different schools and different levels. And then we hope those things will push into our schools. We offer PL2 on Fridays, our instructional support teachers along with Erin kind of helps guide them too. So we provide PL. Any teachers that are interested in that can sign up for those. And that looks at some of the pieces tied to curriculum and benchmarking for our English language learners. We also have Nadia, who is one of our LSTs, who's supporting really complex medical pieces. So she's able to go in, again, try to build some capacity within our other staff members to support students in the classroom to make sure it's meaningful learning for them. I sit on complex case, so often too I can brainstorm and gather ideas to share with our administrators and our teachers with that, and that's through Southwest Collaborative Support Services. And then lately, I think this year, we've really been encouraging a lot of stakeholders to come to the table. So Alberta Health Services, Lethbridge Family Services, and Immigrant Services joining us to recognize the needs that do span outside of education too, and those are the ones that are really impacting our students. Sorry, that's lots, and I spoke fast there. But does that answer your question, Andrea?
That's awesome. Thank you. It's nice to hear about all the supports that you have in place. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Andrea. Jenny.
Thank you for being with us today, and thank you for the report. I just wanted to also acknowledge the Inclusive Educational Parent Advisory Committee, that the work has begun on that.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a conversation that our board has been involved in, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that work and the appreciation we have in that work beginning. And thank you for that. And then my question was, the following paragraph talks about the work being done with our meeting the education and basic needs of our immigrant youth, and refers to the committee having identified action items. And I'm just wondering if you can clarify for me what committee that is, if that's referring still to that Inclusive Education Advisory Committee, or if this is another committee that works specifically for immigrant youth.
Oh, gotcha. So is that the part that is
For
at
the
the bottom of
inclusive.
my? inclusive?
Yeah, I just wondered, I'm just trying to understand the work being done.
Yeah, so that group was started it was at the end of last year. And so it did stem out of some concerns that one of our high schools brought forward in terms of finding counseling supports and any kind of mental health supports in other languages. So when I brought it back to Immigrant Services and Alberta Health, we started to recognize there's a lot of groups that are seeing the same gaps. So we thought, well, power in numbers, let's get us all together and try to work together as collaborative teams. So some of our action items, Jenny, I can just clarify some of them. Working with the city to talking around transportation. So right now, our youth, if we do want them in our English for Access program in high school, there is just a specific program on one site, which is North, which can be flexible, but that's where we find a lot of our population is. So even looking at busing and transportation for that, because it can be very hard for our new families to maneuver the transportation system here with the downtown depot and things like that. We also talked about translation and interpretation. Interpreters are very hard to find here. Unless you are a client of Immigration Services, you're not able to access the interpreter services there. So we do end up contracting our own. And also we would love to learn, and Jessie has been working on this too, just more of our technology that can translate for us. However, we also recognize that we need it to be accurate. And I think that's so important. So that is one of our action items, just exploring those further. Health and well-being, we talked around the medical pieces and mental health pieces. There's lots of different cultural beliefs around, those services, and even just tech awareness and making sure our kids are safe, because regardless of language, they are accessing technology. So how, as a community, can we ensure those things are happening? And then the other one was some of the opportunities that our newcomer families have as parents. They have to attend their flexibility classes. So what are the kids doing in the meantime? So just bringing our community together, it was pretty neat to see, like, the university saying, well, we have space. And so all of these communication pieces were coming together, and Lethbridge Family Services saying, well, we can provide people. And so there's lots of things to iron out, but it was just a great opportunity for all of those stakeholders to work as one.
Just to clarify really quickly, thank you for sharing that much detail. The reason I asked this is I've had a few questions come out of the Division School Council wondering about some of exactly the same things that you're talking about. What are some of our strategies, and what are some of the things that we can do to support families and students in just exactly the ways that you just explained? And so I appreciate that information. And really what I'm trying to clarify is, what is the committee doing this work, so that when I'm speaking back to the Division School Council, I can reference them.
Okay, like who's on it?
Well, no, the name of the committee. It just says
name of the
it just says
committee.
this committee has identified, and I'm not sure what committee
It is called the Immigrant Youth Community Conversations Group.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
I just wasn't sure what committee we were referencing. And so in sharing that information back to parents, I just wanted to have clarity. And
Sure.
so sorry, can you say that name again?
Yeah, Immigrant Youth.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
Thank you. Craig?
Sure, yes, thanks, Craig. I can definitely check in with Erin as to when her next feedback meeting is, because I know she is getting that ongoing too, so I can check in with her on that.
Allison.
Thanks, Jackie. I have a couple of questions and comments. I appreciate that you're here when Morag's not able to be. I appreciate us having the opportunity to ask questions and everything else. So I will always highlight the off-campus education and career pieces. I think that's what we're directing and waiting for our students to guiding them in the future of employment and post-secondary. So just a highlight to off-campus education. They're also working on the dual credit opportunities, and I think the deadline is coming up for November 29th.
Yes.
Looking at those dual credit opportunities is absolutely amazing, and the list is actually quite lengthy, and it's great to have some of our students be able to get into there. So that is great work that they are doing, as well as what's listed there. When we look at some of the pieces around governance and what we can pull from the reports and what information that you share, and later in our agenda, assurance results and our assurance plans are things that we look at. And when we go into strategic planning, I know the work that Jim Kerr does is quite important to our division. And I know you shared that there's some stats that he shares with administrators. I'm just wondering if there's any stats that you'd ever be able to share with us in regards to what might help support our conversations when we're looking at strategies and we're looking at our assurance plans in the work that Jim is doing, because it is such important work. So that might be something that you can go back and think about, is that are there parts of that could be shared, and whether that's part of our in-camera conversation or our committee of the whole. But I think just for us to be able to be informed when we go forward with our strategic planning, to have that information, I think is important.
Sure.
Did you have any thoughts on that, or?
No, I do think there would be some really valuable information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think just if you can share at some point, it's not certainly for next month. It doesn't need to be in this report. I just think if we can have access to that at some point, it would assist us. Of course, for the inclusive education, I put a big check mark. So I appreciate that the work has begun and that you're going to connect with Parkland, and I appreciate that. One thing with the immigrant youth conversation piece, I think that's really important work as well. And then when I hear you speak of some of the challenges and barriers, and I try to pull out that governance piece as well for us. And I'm just wondering if there's pieces of those conversation that you could provide us with advice that for us to be doing our advocacy work when we're meeting for joint school board city meeting, or whether we're meeting with the MLA, or whether we're meeting provincially. I think that out of those conversations, there might be some pieces of advocacy for us. So if you could provide us, or if you have any ideas now, whatever, but I know certainly in the past, there's been some challenges with transportation that we've worked back and forth and shared. But I think just to continue those conversations with the advocacy would be key. And then I think that's great with parent engagement, and hearing from Patterson to have 120 parents that are able to connect. I think that those connections are so important, and those opportunities are important for our families to feel that they're engaged in their students' education and those ISPs. So I appreciate that work. And then I just want to highlight, I know that under digital wellness, the Ever Active Schools Conference, so I know Christina as well as myself have attended those conferences before, and it's great when we have school divisions represented, and to see our school division represented there, I think is really important. So I think Christina is registered to go this year in January, hopefully, fingers crossed. So it's definitely a great conference to go to. So I appreciate that they're going and presenting. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Christina.
Sorry, we always have lots on this.
Okay.
This is mostly just a shout out. The family support team, as you mentioned in the report, did receive funding. And I just wanted to, I'm often found talking about things that are underfunded. I just always want to shout out when we do receive funding for things that are not guaranteed. I know that team provides invaluable service to ensure that all students are able to be ready to learn every day. And while education systems are not funded for those kind of social services, the division goes out of their way to make sure that, to the best of our ability, we do everything we can to get those barriers out of the way. And so I just want to acknowledge for the community that that funding came through the city and the province through FCS funding, I believe. And it's just never guaranteed. And that team is so valuable. So I always wait with crossed fingers every year that application goes out to make sure that it comes back. So just want to celebrate and acknowledge that sometimes good things get funded.
Excellent. Thank you, Christina. All right, seeing no more hands, thank you, Jackie, for the reports. We will move on to 8.3, Human Resources. Robbie.
Hello. Okay, I'll move right into staff training and development. The HR team collaborating with our inclusive ed team with SIVA training. And so wanting to highlight that SIVA training, there'll be SIVA training offered at the end of December, right before the break, specifically for our substitute teachers and casual educational assistant staff. We have not solely offered this opportunity to those staffing groups before and feel this is a really important opportunity for some of those who wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to take this training. So we're hoping that we fill this class with some of our substitute teachers and our casual support staff. This is a voluntary opportunity, so hopefully we can fill that class. Down to strategic planning and staffing, we'll highlight that West Cooley Station Elementary School staffing process and planning is well underway, and there'll be communication coming out to all staff next week on some things that will be taking place as far as 25-26 staffing. It sounds like it's a long time away, but it comes quickly. So we'll be communicating in that regard. There'll also be some communication coming pretty early for the 25-26 overall staffing process. And Katie Guccione and myself will be attending the U of L walkabout on December 6th, which is always a really exciting opportunity to meet some of our new and upcoming teachers who are going through PS3 and soon to be, hopefully some of them, future Lethbridge School Division teachers. Some conference and committee participation. I would like to take this opportunity to thank some of our administrators throughout the division who take the time, and are highly engaged in some of this committee work that we're doing. Specifically this morning, we had our HR Staffing Processes Advisory Committee working diligently to collaborate with us and provide feedback on some of our staffing processes to make sure that we are doing what we can possibly do best to support our staff and make sure that we're providing fair and equitable access to some of those opportunities across the division. So I do want to shout out to those administrators who are participating on those committees. Our wellness committee will meet on December 5th, pardon me. December 5th is our next meeting. The AI committee, Jackie and I actually have the opportunity or the pleasure to sit on that committee and support facilitation through Jesse Sedlowski. I will highlight, hopefully it's not overstepping some of the other highlights, what a beautiful cross-section of people that are on that committee and representing that committee. And so we got to meet a variety of different parent groups, community stakeholders, and some incredibly knowledgeable and committed people looking at AI, not just in general, but specific to AI in schools, AI in classrooms, and some of those ethical guidelines and practices that come with AI. And a shout out to Garrett Simmons, who was at a communication conference and was given some bouquets about his coverage for the 5125 Club banquet in September. Thank you, Garrett. You're always so supportive with all the things that we do around the school division. Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie. Any questions? Andrea?
Thank you for your report, and I really think that's a great SIVA opportunity. I think that's going to work out really well. Thanks for arranging that. And thank you for all your work around staffing procedures for 25, 26. And once those go out, maybe in December, could you walk us through those at a
Absolutely, absolutely. It's not public knowledge yet, but as soon as I've had the opportunity to communicate with our stakeholder groups, the Board of Trustees will be apprised to what's going on for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Robbie? Allison?
Thanks, Robbie, for your report. I just have a couple questions under the human resources portion.
Sure.
So I know that the dates there that the update is for is October 11th to the 14th. When we look at looks like some new, like the teacher's extended contract and some temporary hires. And then under QP 2843, the educational assistant contracts, there's 10. So is that additional positions that were added?
These would be contracts to support leaves, potential leaves. So there would be a contract in like a temporary contract in place to support a leave. Would be similar to like a contract extended for the teachers.
Okay. And then for the EA, the contracts, is that for leaves as well, or?
That would be mostly for leaves, yes.
Okay.
But some of the contracts may be new contracts for positions that were carried over that hadn't been hired yet from either earlier in the fall or in the summer.
Okay. Knowing that most times your report is about new hires, I'm just curious in regards to turnover and what that looks like for how many staff are leaving the division. And is that something that we could also have knowledge of, is how many of these are for positions that people have left?
Through attrition? Like
Through attrition or for leaving
resignation or
for other reasons?
Okay.
Yeah. My questions kind of come with, I've been asked in regards to, do we do exit interviews? And I don't know if we do or don't.
We do.
Okay.
So historically, we hadn't been consistent. This year, we're piloting a very formalized exit interview process with our support staff group. And once we see how that goes, then we'll reevaluate to see if it's an opportunity we extend to all staff groups.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate that. I do think that it is important information as the board continues into budget processing over the next number of months and into the new year. I know this weekend I was at a community event and was approached by a staff member that's leaving the division, and for unfortunate reasons due to the conditions in the classroom as well as the rate of pay, and the comments were quite disheartening and certainly not anything new. And I feel like people need to be heard. And I think that I need to certainly express that. It certainly brought tears to my eyes at a community event, which we should never have to be in that position. And I've certainly at budget time expressed those concerns, but I think that I think we need to have the knowledge of why people are leaving our division, and it needs to be information that when we're making decisions, we're making informed decisions, that we know that people are leaving and the reason that they're leaving. So I think that that's important information, not for specific people, but I just think in general it's good information to have, and that we continue to support our EAs and our teachers in the work that they are doing, and certainly lots of challenges as we move forward for sure. But I think that we need to acknowledge that we hear those conditions that they're working in.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Rob. Oh,
Thank you.
Were you? Oh no, you're waving. Okay. Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
All right, we have some cross-country runners that have joined us. Are you waiting for more, or is this everyone that's coming? Do you know? Okay, then we'll keep on going. Yeah, I'll check in and then, yeah, for sure. Okay, we'll move on to 9.1, board priorities report.
Okay, A lot of it's been covered already, but I'll go through a few things. It's certainly very exciting to have everyone here. I know you're really fired up to hear about board priorities, so this will, I'm sure, be the highlight of your week. So welcome and congratulations. Yeah, so just a few things. I'll hit some of the highlights, but of course, as always, if you have questions, happy to answer them. Won't go into a huge amount of detail. Some of this has already been covered. You know, you'll see first, and Craig mentioned it earlier about the work that Aaron Herkett is doing in relation to helping parents understand new curriculum, what that looks like, and reporting, and some of the pilot project work that we're doing. That's been a real area of focus for us this year and will continue to be an area of focus. At the bottom of the page, it talks about new curriculum. Those things are very connected. There's been an announcement about new curriculum coming in the grade 7 to 9 area, even up into grade 10. So we're going to continue to be on the new curriculum journey. That presents challenges. That's a lot of work for our staff. There's no question about it, but it also presents opportunity. And the work that Aaron is doing, it provides a really good opportunity to connect with stakeholders, help them understand what the curriculum is like, and then more effectively report back to them how are students doing in relation to the curriculum. So some really good work there being done that we're very, very pleased with. And then it talks about, under report cards, it talks about on November 12th was our collab day, and there's a lot of work done on that. I was in, it was either earlier this week or last week, I can't remember which, and there's a group of grade 6 teachers working with Jody Babke, and they were working on some of the reporting back and the new curriculum, and that was a great opportunity to talk with them about some of the challenges that they face, but also some of the benefits of the work. So really, really appreciated that. And of course, our staff does just fantastic work. So it was great to connect with them. This is mentioned throughout the board priority reports. We did have our collaborative communities on November 12th in the morning. And so that's where essentially staff members get an opportunity to select, to create communities with other teachers, and they can learn about topics of mutual interest, work together. And so just really appreciate the work that goes into that to make that happen. It was mentioned earlier about dual campus and experiential learning and the work that we do with the post-secondaries. So that's really, really, we're very appreciative of the relationships we have with our post-secondaries. And, you know, on Team Lethbridge, I had an opportunity to connect with our post-secondary leaders as well, and just have some conversations about expanding those opportunities, about talking to the government about how in Lethbridge we do work together very well, and there's lots of opportunity here. So that was absolutely wonderful to be able to do that. It was mentioned earlier, but Jesse Sedlowski did have his first artificial intelligence committee meeting, and I wasn't in for much of it, but certainly, as Robbie mentioned, a real cross-section of stakeholders, and I think a lot of good work being done there, and I'm appreciative of that work that is being done. And then under Indigenous education, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to mentions Julius Delaney, one of our elders that's worked with us and been very, very present here in the Ed Center and throughout our schools. And also wanted to mention Troy Delaney. I was at the LCI opening ceremonies for the 4A volleyball provincials, and there he was drumming as part of the provincials. So just appreciate all that they do to support our schools and our school division. And then Administrator Professional Learning on the 14th, we did have a bit of, we had our admin committee meeting, and then we had professional learning. The admin committee meeting was about 15-20 minutes. We kept the business, quote unquote, business part pretty short. We got into some professional learning. So we did some work on assessment. That's an area of focus. We did two things. One was we spent some time on assessment. I met with the high school teachers to have some conversation about what that looks like. Aaron met with middle school and elementaries to talk a little more about the report card pilot and that sort of thing. Then we all came back together and we spent time on our results, on our school results and what those mean, and some path forward on that, which I will talk more about when we talk about the AARR, because we are doing some work on that. Yeah, just want to let you know that. So that's it for me, unless there's any questions that anyone has.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. Are there any questions for Mike? Jenny.
Thank you for the report. I wondered about the PowerPoint presentation that Aaron has been sharing with our school councils. I wondered if that's something that maybe the board could have a link to. just for our own learning as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I know Craig had mentioned maybe have Aaron come to a committee of the whole or something and provide some feedback. So I know Aaron would be thrilled to do that. And yeah, we can get you that link for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay, I'm just checking in. Is everyone here yet? Still waiting? That's all good. We'll keep going. Oh yeah, totally. We're good. All right, Mike, donations and support.
Okay, this is awesome. We got a good crew here for this. Donations and support, as always, we'll just talk briefly about this one. I think the most important thing is just to recognize how fortunate we are in this division, the support that we get. And there's two great examples of members of our community supporting our schools, Nicholas Sharon and Senator Joyce. So we're just really appreciative of the support we get. We do this every month, and every month it's the same thing, how grateful we are for the generosity of this community and their willingness to support us. So thank you to the community. Okay, acknowledgement of excellence. I always like this one. And again, I'll just hit a few highlights. And if you got questions, maybe I can answer them, maybe I can't. So Lethbridge Christian School, a few things that really jumped out in their write-up. First of all, right at the start, talking about some of their focused learning goals about reading intervention, building stamina for students, and then of course their faith-based perspective of understanding and building their biblical worldview. And then as you get through there, they talk about that idea of empathy, community service, and that's a very specific thing that they're doing at LCS, where they actually have an exploratory course that's called Serving the Community. So that's pretty exciting, and I think particularly for Lethbridge Christian, a great way to help young people experience their faith in a very tangible way. So something that's very important, obviously, to that school community. And then, that last paragraph I think is bang on. If you've ever been to an event at Lethbridge Christian School, they have tremendous support from their community. Really, in many ways, the school is the hub of the community. And so just really appreciative of all the support that we get from the community in Lethbridge Christian School and all the great opportunities that they provide. Then we'll get into Dr. Plaxton. Pretty neat with their farm to table approach to their nutrition grant, where they have students involved and they're making food, and they're looking forward to potentially connecting with Lethbridge Polytechnique and their culinary program. So really just a great example of providing our students with some really neat opportunities to explore some skills. And then they talk about land-based learning. Again, that's a school that was designed specifically with some land-based learning in mind, and glad to see that they're embracing that and the benefits that land-based learning potentially brings for schools. So, and then their Hive Nights look really exciting. Just again, when we talk about engagement of the community, that's another example where trying to move away a little bit from the traditional interview and really get parents more involved and understanding of the learning journey that students are going on. So pretty excited about that. And then they've also established their first school society. So that's kind of exciting too. One of those little sort of milestones as you open a relatively new school. So yeah, and I love the branding of the Hive Nights. I think that's pretty neat. Yeah. So looking forward to hearing a little more about that journey. The first one is What is the Buzz, and the second one is Build Your Bees. So that's pretty cool. Then Nicholas Sharon Elementary School, easy for me to say. Lots going on at Nicholas Sharon as well. A few things that stood out for me, that talk about the choir. And again, it's another example, and you see this in our AERR, you hear it at the town hall, you see it in the highlights all the time of all the opportunities we provide for our students to explore their talents, to pursue passions, those sorts of things. We've got a whole bunch of students here that have that opportunity through school to explore passions as well. So it's something we're very, very proud of. And certainly, I know the choir programs, they love to perform in the community. They love to connect with community and do a great job there. And then, you read in the next paragraph, and it really is very focused on supporting wellness. Another critical thing that's foundational to learning. If we can support students, if we can support our communities to be well, that has a positive impact on learning. bit of discussion in there about our kindergarten program. I know Andrea always likes to give a shout out to that, so appreciate the work that's been done there. And then another school that's really focused on land-based learning, and I think it's a great example of taking advantage of your environment. Nicholas Sharon is in a beautiful park, and they have incredible opportunities. You can do land-based learning anywhere. All you need is a little bit of land, and we're fortunate to have that in Canada, but they've got a very unique situation there, and they're embarking on an Indigenous medicine garden project, and I'll be interested to hear how that goes. I haven't had an update in a little while, but pretty neat stuff happening there. So unless there's questions, that's it for me.
Any questions online? All right. We'll pause and look at them
No, you're
awkwardly
good.
when they walk in. It's great. Okay, keep on going.
This is the most excitement I've had for my report ever. So this is like, this is the pinnacle of my career right now. So it's all good. Yeah. And then they're back. Yeah. And they're back. I'll be really quick though. I'll do the town hall update because we can get through that relatively quickly. So it's just mostly just so the public knows in particular that we are working on the town hall event, getting ready for it. It'll be on February 4th, 2025. We are having some discussions about how we might locate that. And we're just working on fine tuning the questions, making sure the board is comfortable with it. We're hoping to have that done sort of into next week and have that information out as soon as we can. I don't want to tie it to any specific timeline because I also want to make sure that we honor the work that the board wants to do and make sure we get the questions right. And but just to make sure that anybody listening, any stakeholders, and for these students here, we want you to put in your phone February 4th, 2025. We got our town hall, and students are absolutely invited to that, and it's awesome to have you there. So if you've got nothing going on February 4th, 2025, come give us a little bit of feedback about education. We'd love that. So yeah, and everybody's welcome to that. We'll make sure that we send out a lot of information and continue to send it out repeatedly before the event. Allison?
Thanks, Mike. Just if I was new to the division, can you just give me a brief description of what town hall would be and how do I get invited or how do I get to come?
Yeah, great question. So town hall it started before my time in the division, but really it's just a way to bring stakeholders together and to have good dialogue about education. So generally speaking, we have students there, we have staff there, we have parents and guardians there, we have community members there, we have administrators there. Generally speaking, what we do is we have some preset questions, and then we have people in round tables with a facilitator, and they talk about those preset questions. We'll record some of that information. We follow up with a survey, and what that does is it helps us as executive council and a board with our planning going into the next year. And so we take that information, and it's one of the first things we look at when we do our strategic planning in March. It's purposely designed. It's kind of the first thing that we do to start to prepare for the next school year. So as you well know, it's very, very valuable. And in terms of signing up, really there will generally speaking, there's a sign up sheet, but anyone's welcome. If you just walk up and show up, that's fine. We just want you there and we want to hear your perspective. And so that's really what it is. Unless anyone wants to add anything, because you've all been to them as well.
And then quickly, do you want to quickly cover calendar of events so we don't forget that?
Yes, I realized I skipped over it in my excitement to get to town hall. Calendar of events is here. As always, trustees are excellent about adding things in that we're missing. So if there's anything missing, other than it probably should just have a blanket statement that there's a lot going on in schools in December with concerts and all sorts of activities. So I know everyone's going to spend lots of time in schools.
Andrea?
Could I add community engagement to December 16th at 7 p.m., please? Thank you.
Anything else? All right, we're good. Thank you, Mike. We'll pause here and we will formally welcome our guests from the LCI cross country team. Welcome. We're here to recognize and celebrate you. The cross country provincial meet was held in Grand Prairie on October 19th. And all of you made history by being the first team from the South Zone to bring home the 4A gold banner. Well done. Well done. Yes, it's great to have you here and celebrate. And I know there was a lot of hard work and commitment and team building to get you there. And so we're absolutely thrilled that you've been able to experience that victory. And so what we would like to do as a board is we would like to recognize you here with a certificate, and then we'll follow it up with a group picture. So what we will do is we'll have the coaches come up actually to read out the names, and then Mike and I will hand out the certificates. And then after you receive your certificate, we'll have you stand up on the stairs, and then Garrett will take a group picture of everyone. Does that work? All right. Someone wants to be a mic holder.
Oh, all right.
So we need the mic for people online.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah,
So-
perfect.
How do we do this?
Yeah,
Best
we'll
way to
just,
hold.
we'll just.
First one is our coach, Heather Jubber. She's not here. And Emma Martineau Henry.
Congratulations. Well done.
And Olivia Lang, she's not here today. Taya Zagurski is not here. Zoe Steppen.
Congratulations, Zoe. Well done.
Aubrey Jubber, she's not here. Bailey Hill is not here.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Ilario Tata is not here.
Okay.
Wilson McKee is not here, but he said he might come, so
Okay.
we will see if he comes. Tate Lowe.
Congratulations, Kate. Well done.
And Noah Sparkling Eyes. And Raleigh Hagee.
Congratulations. Well done.
And Lainey Jubber, she's not here. Nevaeh Mangle is not here. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Sadie Sheen is not here. I know. Hello.
Congratulations.
And Sarah Kozu.
Congratulations.
And Liv Swift is not here. And Bria Good.
Congratulations, Leah. Well done. Thank you.
And I think those are all that are. Reggie Pollock, Stephen Chatterton, and Coach Janine Ward.
Congratulations.
And then that's me. Yeah. Thank you. Who also is not here? Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So we will send these certificates back with you to share. Oh, sure. Wonderful. Thank you. And then we'll have Garrett take a group photo. Okay, thank you. So now, 9.6 annual education results report. Mike.
Yeah, and I'll get rolling on that, but Allison did mention for the calendar events, we do have the ATA local Christmas dinner on December 4th. So yeah, thanks, Allison. Yep. Okay, next we'll hit the AERR. What I'm gonna do is sort of do a high level overview. We do have to remember that we have to approve this at the end. So we have to have an official board motion. Sometimes I get rolling and I forget to do that. So if I do forget, please remind me. I'm not gonna go through the entire thing, obviously, because you know, that wouldn't be, you've read the document. This will not be the last time that we spend time on this. We are going to spend purposeful time going through the AERR and making sure that, you know, trustees are well aware of how we're performing and some areas that we can improve in and areas that we're having success. So I'm going to hit a few highlights and go through, and then if you have questions, happy to answer them, and we'll just go from there. So in terms of the highlights, some of the things in summary of accomplishments, you're well aware that we're building a new school on the west side, and that's pretty exciting. You also know that we had the boundary engagement process, and although boundary changes can create challenges, it was also a really good opportunity to connect and engage with our community. So you're well aware of the work that the Indigenous education team has done to bring in Indigenous grad evenings, award nights, and you know, the excellent uptake we've had in that. You're aware of the meritorious budget award that we received, so always proud of that work. And then, you know, last year, because this is looking at last year, you know about our esports, hosting the esports championship and how well that went. So in terms of the results, start off with some highlights. 5-year completion improved. We're seeing some good results on our 5-year completion and our completion in general. So we're happy about that. Certainly want to keep doing that. And the 5-year mark, I mean, technically high school is 3 years, but you know, personally, I look at the 3-year, but it's the 5-year, our students getting done, and that's, you know, it doesn't always have to be in that 3-year time frame, but making sure that our kids are getting the opportunity to graduate. Grade 6 PAT acceptable standards, it improved again a bit this year. It's above the province. The 3-year trend is also above the province. So we're pleased about that, continue to have some success there. We do know that with new curriculum coming in, we're going to see less data for a little while, and we'll probably have some bumps in the road with that data. That just happens when you do new curriculum. It takes time for things to settle. So we'll see what that looks like over the few years, but we'll certainly celebrate what we're seeing. Another really neat one that we're very proud of, 100% of our Indigenous students achieved, who wrote the English diplomas, achieved at least the acceptable standard. So that was absolutely awesome. Very happy to see that. We continue to have some really strong results in the program of studies, which is really about, do we offer a broad range of opportunities for our students? We hear that at town hall. We hear that in a lot of different areas. There's always more that you can do in school systems, but certainly we offer a lot of opportunities for our students in a whole variety of areas, including extracurricular. We just had a group here that, you know, was all about extracurricular. So yeah, really good stuff there. However, one of the things we want to be clear on is the results are not where we want them to be. We do see declines in a number of areas. We've been seeing those declines for a few years, certainly since COVID, and it's something that we really need to focus on. In our assurance plan last year, that was one of the things that we said we were going to focus on, and we have started that work. And I'll talk more about that, but we've been doing that work already with our admin committee. We'll be doing that work with the board, and there is a journey that we need to go on here. This is one measure, but it's an important measure, and it's telling us something, and so we need to take a look at that. And I've been really pleased with our administrators. I know a lot of you trustees have reported back, hearing at school council, talk about the results, that sort of thing. Now we got to get get down to some work and figure out what exactly are we hearing and what are the things that we can do with it. So I'll just go through kind of high level some of the key areas that are in the annual assurance results measures that we're required to report on. So PATs and diplomas, as you saw, we're seeing some positive trends in grade 6. We've seen those for a while, likely due to some foundational focus on literacy and numeracy for a number of years in this division. Grade 9 in our diploma results continue to be not where we want them to be, and so that's something that we're really going to look at as we work on our assessment this year and our focus on assessment. High school completion, we do continue to see strong numbers. 5-year grad numbers have been good, 3-year also improved. You will see these results, they always go up and down a little bit, so it's not always that they're going to be improving, but when they are improving, we want to highlight that, and there is some good performance there. We want to continue to do that work because that's really important work. At the end of the day, that's one of the key goals of our organization, is to help students graduate from school. That's pretty important stuff. Citizenship is an interesting one. We've been seeing a decline for the last 4 years in that area. It mirrors the provincial trend where there's a decline as well. And one of the things as we kind of get into the survey results, one of the things that we see is students tend to be pretty hard on themselves and their peers. Concerns about, students not following the rules, maybe not being respectful, caring for each other. One of the questions we have is, will the personal mobile device procedure have an impact on that? Will that, but we know our schools also do some intentional work in there. Like last year, citizenship was up a bit. So is this just a bit of a blip in the radar? But we do see a trend here over a few years, particularly coming back from COVID, where we maybe just haven't really fully come back together as communities. So it's not something, that I can fully say exactly where that trend's coming from, but it's something that we really need to address and make sure that we're paying close attention to that. Student learning engagement, we're seeing, in particular, what we're seeing is students expressing lower levels of satisfaction with some of the core parts of the curriculum. That's different from the program of studies question. When we ask about the broad, do you have a lot of opportunities? Then the answer is, generally speaking, yes, we get exposed to a lot of things. When it's, how excited are you about some of your core classes, then some of the results there aren't as strong. Theoretically, some of the curriculum change will help with that. But again, that's an area we need to continue to take a look at. Educational quality, again, we've seen that trend of kind of decreasing for 4 years, not dropping off of a cliff, but a steady decrease. We're also seeing that in the province. It's definitely an area that we'd like to understand a little bit better. One of the things as we look in the results, there hasn't been a titanic shift, but what we've seen is a move of people that report they're very satisfied, moving over just a little more into that satisfied area. So why is that? Why are we not very satisfied? We're just sort of satisfied, and so that's something that we need to look deeper into. I've mentioned programs of study a couple times. We have strong results here. Again, they'll go up and down, and I suspect as we go through some of the curriculum change, we'll probably see a little bit of fluctuation in these results, simply because the offerings are going to change a little bit, and it'll take us a little while to get there. Welcoming, caring, respectful, and safe learning environments. Again, there's been that 4-year decline, similar to the province. There's really some mixed data in there. If you look at some of the sort of safe and caring, do you feel it's safe at school, that sort of thing, those results have stayed pretty similar. But we do see some erosion in how students view each other, how we treat each other, that sort of thing, which of course relates back to how safe you feel. So that's something that we're definitely going to have to take a good look at. Access to supports and services, been pretty similar, a slight decline, and that really has to do with if you have a student that's struggling in school that has complex needs, that sort of thing, how are they supported? It's a relatively new measure. I anticipate this is an area we're going to have to keep an eye on, because as you well know, as our needs have gone up and our resources haven't increased at that same level, it gets harder and harder to provide the supports that we need to provide. Then parental involvement, we've seen a bit of a decline there. We have some of the survey and some of the stuff we hear from town hall is that sometimes you hear, I really appreciate the communication from the school. Other times we hear it's disjointed or there's not enough. So there's part of that is a bit of communication, and then really what are those opportunities for meaningful input into decisions. So a great example is the report card pilot that we're doing, and really trying to work with parents to say, okay, what are the things that you need as a parent? What do you want to see in a report card? And also understanding some of the things that we're required to report on. So again, it's definitely been an area of focus for this board, and will continue to be an area of focus, is how do we continue to give those opportunities for meaningful dialogue and engagement where people can have meaningful input in decisions that are made at the school level or the division level or whatever that might be. And then, we do have to, part of the reporting is providing some specific reporting on our Indigenous students and our English as additional language students. As mentioned earlier, fantastic results on those diploma exams for our Indigenous students, so we're happy to see that. Certainly very, very pleased with that. Still some low results in a number of areas, because a lot of those areas that are reported on specifically for our Indigenous students are related to PATs, diplomas, high school completion. And so definitely want to continue to see those numbers come up and continue to work on that, and certainly we will. That's an area of focus for the entire division, and certainly for our Indigenous students, an area of focus. For our EAL students, we're seeing some improvement in completion results, and that really is positive, because a lot of that has to do with when is somebody new to the country, when are they showing up. So it's a different journey if you show up in grade 2 and then you have to write a diploma exam 8, 9, 10 years down the road, versus you show up in grade 10 and you have to learn the language, the culture, all those sorts of things, and then sit down and try and write a diploma exam. So still, we do need to continue to work on, especially those PAT and diploma results. And that's been a theme throughout this, that we're going to continue to do that work, and we do have some work that we need to do there. Also, I was going to share with you, I missed one. One other positive that I missed, in terms of the early years assessments, we have seen, and I think as we go along, we'll do better at reporting this data back to you and making it really meaningful. But it's interesting to see that, last year we had 170 students in grade 1 to 3 that moved from at risk to not at risk over the school year. That's a significant number. And then we had 130 students, grade 1 to 3 in literacy, that moved from at risk to not at risk. So definitely some real positive signs there, and very happy to see that. So I should have mentioned that earlier. Then the last thing I'll talk about, and then of course I know you'll have some questions, is so moving forward, because really the question becomes, when you look at these, what are we going to do about this? So yes, the board needs to approve the results report, and then we need to put it on the website. But we don't want that to be the end of the journey with this. This is an area of focus for us. It's something that, the board talked about as part of our assurance planning last year. It's something that we heard at town hall in a variety of ways. It's something that we want to take a look at. And really what we want, there's weaknesses with the process, but also this is one of the signposts in relation to how we're doing. And when we get evidence that says, hey, people have some concerns, questions, then that tells us we need to do some intentional work. So we've already started that work, because as a board, one of the things we all agreed upon is that we are going to make this an area of focus. It's one of the key areas of focus in our societal and local context domain in our assurance plan. So we've already connected that work and said this is something that we're going to need to do. So that means we have spent time already, at least 2 to 3 times already this year with the admin committee, looking at the results, and we're going to continue to do that work. And I'm hopeful that in January, when the board gets together with the admin committee, last year we did a bunch of work on budget, we'll do some of that, but I'd also like to spend some time talking about these results so you can hear directly from our administrators about it. There's a few things that we want to do. One is, because there's a survey part of this assurance process, we want to have a better understanding of the assurance questions and what they're telling us, and really doing a deep dive in that. That's something we'd like to do with the board, and then helping our stakeholders understand what are the questions as well. And that leads into as well better analysis of our results, spending time looking at what are the trends, And what are the, you heard me talk about some of the things, for example, that students, when we look at citizenship, they're struggling with maybe the way some of their peers are acting. And so what are some of the things that we can do to change that? And are we already doing some of those things? And if we are, how do we make that more intentional, a little more focused? Obviously, as I've told you many times, we have a focus on assessment as our admin committee professional learning focus. That focus is going to remain for a number of years. We think it's a broad-ranging focus that we think we can spend some time on. We believe it'll really have an impact. And it allows us also to look at some of the assessment that occurs in PAT and diploma exams, and really, how do we help students with the good learning that they do in class, now transitioning that and bridging that gap to demonstrating that knowledge in a diploma or a PAT, that sort of thing. So yeah, we think obviously there's some positives, but definitely there's some areas that we need to grow in. It's an area of focus for us. And like I said earlier, the administrators have been great working on this, and a big part of the job is to give them time and space and resources to really dig down into these results. And I know anecdotally a number of trustees have shared that they have heard conversations about the results at various school councils that they've been to. And we're just going to continue that, see if we can really do a good job of connecting the work that we do with our assurance plan to these results. So we do want this to be more than just a document that goes on the website. That's part of the process, and there's certain things we have to report on, but we want to make sure that it's meaningful and it's guiding our directions. So I could talk for a long time, but that's too much me talking, so I'll open it up to any questions that anyone might have.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mike. Craig, your hand is up.
Yeah, Mike, one of the things.
Oh, okay. What's your question? We did have this question last year, and yes, I can provide that explanation, but we can also have Aaron come in and provide a deeper explanation on that. Doesn't necessarily mean that students are losing ground. That's not what it's saying. It's saying that yes, they are behind. So if you look at grade 1 where it says they're behind 3.18 months, generally speaking, without any intervention, they would have been behind further. But it's certainly an area that it's not super clear what that's telling us. So yeah, it doesn't mean though that they're going backwards. Yes, it means that they're behind, but they were identified as at risk, as being behind, and what it's saying is even after the intervention, they're still behind, and here's how far they're behind. Does that make sense? So the big question is, we want to get as many students as possible who are not in that at risk. Yeah, we agree. And yeah, you're right. Yes, that last column certainly is a little bit tricky. Again, doesn't mean that there wasn't progress. Just means that maybe wasn't at the level that it would have been for a student who wasn't at risk. So,
Craig, can I interrupt you for a moment? Can I have you possibly try and lean in closer to the mic? I think just with your cold, it's just hard to hear you. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, would you like me to comment on that, Craig? Yeah, I can comment briefly. Yes, you're right. I mean, that's why I started off saying that, I am concerned. This is not where I want us to be. And I think, I don't know that this is a reflection of the good work that we're doing. And if it is a reflection of the work, then okay, there's some areas we need to improve upon. And there's nothing wrong with that and having those conversations. And as you mentioned, our staff work very hard and they're very dedicated. And, I think we're up to the task. I think there is some work that needs to be done. There's limitations to the process, particularly as it relates to how parents access the information. Because like you say, I believe, generally speaking, for most of our schools, depending on your enrollment, some schools, they go out to multiple grades, but for the most part, it goes to grade 4, grade 7, and grade 10. We've been lobbying to be able to provide parents with a code when they come to the school, and they can do it at the school, but the government isn't comfortable with that, so they mail the access codes to parents, and some parents get them, some parents don't. So there's definitely work to be done to make sure that parents know that this is these surveys come out, this feedback's really important to us. And then yes, you're 100% right, is making sure that's part of the reason why I want to share with the board, here's what the questions look like, this is what parents see, and also helping parents out with that so they know, well, this is what the questions, this is what it's going to look like. We really want your feedback on it, et cetera, et cetera. And then how do we also collect our other data at the town hall and through some of our surveying that we do that supports some of this and maybe fills in some of the gaps, some of the information that we don't get from this, or we get some information that we kind of go, like, I know what it's saying, but I'm not 100% sure what it's saying. And that's where something like Town Hall is a great opportunity to really add to this data and help us really understand what stakeholders are seeing and feeling. So short answer is yes, there are some weaknesses in the process that we need to address for sure. Yeah.
And I'll just add on to that, Mike. This is advocacy around the process was discussed when we were in Team Lethbridge, discussing it with a minister because of the inaccessibility it presents. Inaccessibility to English language learners. Not everybody opens a letter and sees this fulsome letter and sits and reads it in that moment or finds their code. And certainly in school council meetings, when they've presented their assurance results for their school site, 6 or 7 parents does not represent the full school, right? So there's definitely challenges we need to advocate for and help find a solution to, for sure. Jenny.
My comment is to the report itself. I do have a comment for the content, but for the report itself, what I'm wondering is people looking from our community at this report, do they know what they're reading when they look at these charts? Do they know when we look at the column with an N above it, do they know what that means? Do people know how to interpret these? Like, we see a lot of red and concern. We see a lot of orange of issue. But in trying to understand, where are we seeing movement? Where are we seeing some forward growth? And where are we seeing some negative growth? These charts can be a little bit challenging to interpret fully. And so I'm wondering if that's something we could consider including into our report is, and especially we have this chart with these negative numbers, these negative results. We almost need like a legend. Like, we almost need a section where we explain what these charts are and how to interpret them and how to read them. Because if you just look at this and you just see all this red, all you see is concern, really. And so when we're trying to tease out, okay, here's where we're seeing a little bit of progress, or here's where we really actually need to be really focused, it might be helpful to add something like that in there. And then, if I may speak to just content, I echo Craig's concern. I echo what you yourself have said, Mike. We have some areas of concern for sure. We recognize the limitations of the system itself here and that this is only one indicator, but regardless, we are seeing something that makes us concerned for sure. And especially having been concerned last year and having made it a priority and made it a focus, I think what we're needing to do is really take a hard look at our strategies and a hard look at the ways that we can implement and continue to implement those strategies and additional strategies that are going to help us get to a place where we are looking at a different result by next year. And so I commend the board for that commitment and the division staff as well for that commitment. And I think it's valuable for us to see this and to recognize the work we have to do. And there's a lot.
Hey, Jenny. Anyone else? Andrea.
I appreciate you sharing the report, and I do echo what everyone is saying about it being front and center with our strategic planning. And I do commend all of our staff for all of the wonderful teaching that happens in our division. And I also agree about the inaccessibility of filling it out and how we could maybe get more parents to do it. I can kind of recall that in the past, maybe there was something that a parent got if they filled it out. I don't know, but I'm trying to remember that. And around students, talking about other students around citizenship, I'm hopeful that with our digital wellness policy now, I've heard at schools that students are really at lunchtime talking with each other, and I can, informing friendships, and I can see that in the future that will probably go up because they will know each other better. They won't be looking at a screen. So I'm hoping that that will help in that area.
Allison.
Thank you, Mike, for presenting the report. I know that today we need to approve the report, and I know that there's going to be future conversation for us to dig more deep. So I echo what my colleagues have said today in regards to looking further into some of those areas of concern. And then, of course, that knowing our staff are doing amazing jobs, it's us trying to figure out what we need to do to make a difference. Couple of areas that I just wanted to point out. One is, my page numbers came off the bottom, but when we have the summary of accomplishments, so number 19, and this isn't so much about the report, but more so that we were just recently up at ASBA, Alberta School Boards Association, and on the Sunday night was an awards ceremony. And I think that what we have highlighted in number 19 in regards to the School Boundary Realignment Committee, when we look at the engagement that our division has done in regards to this, I think should be hugely commended for the amount of engagement and the response and the feelings that people had around that boundary alignment piece. So I think that that engagement should be recognized. So I would encourage our board and our division to certainly to put that forward for recognition, because I think that there was lots of great work when we look at engagement. So which then turns me to, besides all the other stuff that we will have further conversation about, turns me to near the back where it's the domain of governance and the parent involvement piece. When I look at the strategies and then I look forward to our previous plans as well as our plan moving forward, the strategies that I see listed are primarily formal strategies, and I know that it does say that these are, it's not limited to these, but I would like to see highlighted in the strategy area, knowing that we need to approve this plan today. I think it's important to recognize the access to trustees in informal ways, I think is important. And I know in our plans moving forward in our previous plans, we've had things such as community conversations. We've had things such as trustees having liaison schools, trustees attending school events. So those are providing opportunities for parents to have that engagement with trustees that isn't in a formal set way where there is an agenda or anything else. It is an opportunity, and those are in our plans. I think that that needs to be highlighted in our strategies, that it's not just informal ways for parents to go to a meeting or to town hall or a committee. It is that there is other ways. And then I would also add in there, when I look at this page, I don't see the engagement such as the boundary engagement piece, which I do think is about parent engagement in their students' education. It was parents being engaged in, that they wanted the Spanish program moved to the new school. That is parents engaged in their students' education. I think that those engagement pieces need to be highlighted in here as well. I think too, to the work that DIPT has done over the last couple of years, and I think that engagement is important when we look at the diversity piece and the work that was done a couple of years ago. When we look at the inclusive ed piece that was done around the ISPs, I think that some of those engagement pieces should be included when we're looking at those strategies of us moving forward and how we're going to try to increase that parental involvement versus what I see is, I know that it says are not limited to, but I think if we could have a flavor of some of the other things that we do in our division that we have made attempts and we have done well, I think that those should be recognized in here, that engagement is in other ways than just attending a meeting. So for me to approve the plan, I would want to have some of those pieces in there. Thanks.
Yeah, if you'd like to suggest amendments, we can make amendments before it's posted on the website. So.
Thank you, Allison. Is your hand up, Jenny? Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, I just want to say thank you, Mike, to you and your team for the time, effort, and diligence to put this report together. It is a fulsome perspective of our division, and there's lots of things that we were able to celebrate within this report, and there are lots of things we're doing well, and it's been said around the table already, we have an incredible staff community and parent community and student community that makes this all happen. And so thank you especially to the staff that serve our students on the front lines every day. And there's also there's room for improvement, and what I appreciate about this report and your approach is the intentionality to use the data to make us better. And we already see that in play. One example that comes to my mind right away is Erin's work on the new report cards and the videos that she's putting out, and the feedback that I'm hearing even in that. It speaks to our priority and focus on assessment, parental engagement, and building capacity. And even that action is doing all of those things with the end result, hopefully, intentionally, to be higher achievement for students, right? And so I appreciate the work that's already being done, and it's hard because we don't always see results right away. It's sometimes the long game, but I appreciate the work that you're putting in, not just to this report, but the actions that need to be taken to make success come to life. So thank you. All right, I'm looking for a motion to approve the report.
I did hear some interest in amending it, so we
Okay.
can either, there's one of two ways we can do it. We have
Yes.
to have it on the website by November 30th. So, but you can always go back and amend it after the fact too. Like there's not, you can put it up on November 30th and then amend after the fact. Or if there's some specific amendments that we can make, we can try and get those done by November 30th. So yeah, there's a couple ways you can do it if that's the way you want to do it.
Certainly, my apologies. I know Allison suggested the amendment, and it was my understanding that a couple of the things were going to be put in. Are you Allison, would you like to request specific wording, or do you want to just hand it to Mike? I'll let you speak to it.
I would like the board to approve the 2023-2024 annual education results report as amended with recommendations incorporated from the board meeting of November 26. I feel that Mike has heard and that can make those amendments. And certainly it's not that all the things that I listed need to be in there, but I just feel it needs to have more of a flavor of those pieces. So.
Like more in the parental engagement section.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just on those informal ways or the other engagement pieces that we've done.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, and we've got a bunch of them in our assurance plan already, and so it's nice to connect the two anyways, so that can be done, and then we can maybe add a few things in there, and that's not a big deal. And then Jenny, if we want to discuss yours as well. Yeah, I mean, certainly it's a really good idea to, I mean, we could just sort of do a chart and here's what this means, and we could probably try and put something together here in the next couple of days even to put it in there, or it could just be a future thing for us to do, because I do like the idea. It makes lots of sense. And that's one of the, I think that's part of our journey, is making sure that we're really taking the time to say, okay, what are these results telling us? And I think you're exactly right. Like, the colors do jump out in the chart. They tell a story just by themselves, but also what's the nuance, and then how do you just read the chart? Because there is a bunch of numbers in there. There's a lot of data, but it can be hard to, So do you have a perspective on that of, do you want us try and amend that before November 30th, or is that more of a future direction?
That was going to be my question. My hand was up to ask, actually, to pose that to you, is whether or not that's something reasonable for you to accomplish before your deadline, or for it to be accomplished, or if that is something to kind of keep in mind for next time. So, I mean, if possible, I think that it would be something of value. But I make that request if it's within reason only. So.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think it is. I'd be happy to take a crack at it. I guess here's what I would be looking for is if I go, whoa, this is, to do this right, it might take me a little more time if, if we'd still be okay with passing it and then amending it later or something like that. But yeah, I'd be happy to take a crack at it. I think we could get that process started. I like the idea of getting it in the ARR now, so we're not next year going, remember we were going to do this. So I think even if we can get something in there, then next year we can build on it and improve it, then I think that would be good. So I'll take a good whirl at it.
I'll just leave it to your discretion to navigate that as you're able to. So thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Jenny. Craig.
Yeah.
Thank you, Craig. Anyone else? Okay, the motion is on the table. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to pause superintendent's report for now. We have very special guests bringing our audit to us in the room. So I'm going to invite the team up to the front to present. So what we're going to do now to honor their time, we're going to go over 12.1 audited financial statements. And then following 12.1, we will go to 10.1 since Avis is in the room and do our 2024-2025 budget update. And then we'll tag back to you, Mike.
Would it be okay if before Avis goes, if I talk about one of my items, the enrollment growth follow-up, and then that will dovetail into, you'll provide more. Yeah, okay, awesome.
All right, thank you very much. So it's that time of year where we've had our fiscal health checkup to make sure that the division is reporting our revenues and expenditures and operations correctly. And so here are our auditors with us, Will Zobel, who's the partner with BDO, and Kylie Hogg, who is the audit senior, who really did all the work on the audit. Her and her team came. They spent the week in my office, working diligently to do their audit testing and ask a lot of questions of Avis and the team, and then as well as myself. And so they're going to present the audit report and findings, and then as the financial statements are management's responsibility, Avis, who does all the work on putting those together, she's going to present the audited financial statements to you. And I do want to put a plug in though. The audited financial statements you see are really a template requirement from Alberta Education, so all divisions have to have that. But we also supplement that report with our management discussion analysis. And so if you read anything, read the management discussion analysis report, because that really tells you the whys and the whats. And because you'll go through if you look through the audit report, which I'm not saying not to read the other statements, I would suggest you do, and the notes are very informative. But if you're thinking, well, why did that change, or why is that? Look at the management discussion analysis report, because chances are it explains it. So, okay. All right, turning it over to Kylie and Will and Avis.
You'll need to push the button on the back of the microphone first. Sorry. There we go.
Perfect. Can you hear me? Perfect. So thank you for that introduction, Christine. We have audited the financial statements of the Lethbridge School Division, which comprise the statement of financial position as of August 31st, 2024, and the results of operations, change in net financial assets, cash flows, and statement of remeasurement gains and losses for the year then ended, and then the notes to the financial statements, including a summary of significant accounting policies. In our opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position of the division as at August 31st, 2024, and its results of operations, changes in net financial assets, cash flows, and statement of remeasurement gains and losses for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So in other words, it's a clean audit. And then we would just like to thank Avis and her team for all the help that they have done throughout our audit. Perfect. Okay, I am going to, if I do this, is that gonna, or where did my presentation go? No? Okay, you know what? It'll take 2 seconds because it'll just have been, oh, nope, there it is right there. We're good. Okay. Okay, I am pleased to present the 2023-2024 audited financial statements and the related financial reports, which have all been provided to you in your agenda package. The following provides a high-level review of the financial statements and provides details of the management discussion and analysis, as well as the financial health indicators report. During this presentation, we'll review the following areas: student enrollment, the division's financial position, accumulated surplus and reserves, statement of operations, financial health, and the additional data that's available for understanding the 2023-2024 finances. So we will start with enrollment. For the 2023-2024 school year, the division had 12,229 students from early education to grade 12, which is a 2.2% increase from the prior year. For the financial position of the division, as shown on page 4 of your financial statements, as at August 31st, the division had financial assets of $18.88 million, which comprise of cash, investments, and receivables. Of the receivables, the vast majority relates to Alberta education grants, the weighted moving average funding adjustment,
and CMR funding, and the GST rebate from the federal government. The financial position also comprises of $17.83 million in financial liabilities, which is mostly comprised of payables, unspent deferred contributions, and the asset retirement obligation. Of the total $17.83 million of liabilities, accounts payable is $6.37 million. This includes any payments the division had outstanding at August 31st, which include payroll and pension remittances, accrued vacation, construction holdbacks, and other various services. The asset retirement liability is a legal obligation the school division has to remove mainly asbestos, but any other hazardous materials from various buildings under the division's control. The timing of these projects are not known, as it depends on when the building were to undergo renovations, and therefore the liability is based on management's best estimate with assistance from third-party environmental experts. Other liabilities include employee future benefit liability of some banked time and an estimated liability of accumulated sick time for the QP 290 group as their time accumulates year to year. Within the financial liabilities also include unspent deferred capital contributions of $5.05 million, which is outlined on Schedule 2 of your financial statements. And these deferred contributions include $8,700 of operating activities from other Government of Alberta programs, and which would be for the mental health capacity building. It's from Alberta Health Services. New this year from Jordan's Principal through Indigenous Services Canada. This is targeted funding that must be spent on specific eligible students. The majority of this funding is for educational assistance and will be spent in 24-25. $2.9 million of deferred provincial operating funding for IMR and CMR funding, and $1.49 million in Alberta Ed restricted grants. So that's school nutrition, new curriculum, digital wellness, digital assessment funding, and the transportation grant is now a targeted grant. So instead of it going through reserves, it now has to go through deferred. So just kind of where it's being placed within the financial statements. And this funding will be spent in 24-25. And lastly, $656,000 of unspent deferred capital, which will be put towards the West Cooley Elementary School. So therefore, if you take our financial assets less our liabilities, you get a result of $1.05 million in net financial assets. The non-financial assets of $171.76 million consists mostly of capital assets. The total capital assets are $169.5 million, which includes about $159.09 million of supported assets from the province, which is within our spent deferred capital contributions, and about $10.4 million in board-funded assets. So there was $16.52 million of capital asset additions during the year. $14.31 was in building and work in progress, mainly the elementary school, and $2.21 million in equipment and technology purchase additions. So therefore, the accumulated surplus, or referred to as net assets, results in $13.72 million. So if we go and look at that a little bit more, the accumulated surplus, as shown in Note 9 of your financial statements, is comprised of $471,000 of unrestricted reserves and $6.14 million of operating reserves, for a total of $6.61 million. A portion of these reserves have been allocated for the 24-25 school year. $121,000 in school-based activities, $272,000 within inclusive learning for staffing, about $312,000 within early learning to maintain programming, $400,000 in new school resources for West Cooley Station, and $24,000 within operations and maintenance. Just a reminder, I know we've talked about this before, but Alberta Education has a cap on reserve levels for school jurisdictions. For August 31st, 2024, the cap is 3.2%. Due to shortfalls occurred with the weighted moving average funding model, the division has used these reserves over the last number of years to maintain programming and student supports, and its reserve balance at August 31st, 2024 is 2.45%. In addition to the accumulated surplus from operations, there's also board-funded investment in capital reserves, and endowments. So that's how we get to the $13.72 million. The statement of operations, or otherwise known as the income statement, is made up of revenues and expenses of the division, and you can see this on page 5, or further details are on page 13, and that shows each of the different reporting areas. So there was 142.7 million of revenues of the division. 95% was from the government of Alberta. This is 100.6 of the operating budget. New one-time funding from Alberta Education announced throughout the year, mainly the transportation grant that was announced. That was not included in the operating budget, as well as increased interest revenue and other sales, which would be the international student revenue. And these were offset by lower than budgeted school-generated fund activities. And then just a reminder that the budget within the financial statements is the preliminary budget that would have been approved, that's legally adopted in May of 2023. The year-end reporting and all the other financial reporting for the division is based on the operating September 30th budget, as this provides the most up-to-date budget based on available information. So just if you're having to be looking at the income statement on page 5 and you're not sure where those numbers are not necessarily lining up exactly, that's why. There was also 144.02 million in expenditures, 79% is staffing costs, and expenditures were at 99.9% of operating budget. Instruction had a deficit overall, but was less than budgeted. There was also a deficit within operations and maintenance. Page 14, or Schedule 4 within the financial statements, breaks down the costs within the plant operations and maintenance area. This area continues to see cost pressures as funding is not keeping up with rising costs. Transportation at year-end had a surplus due to the revenue earned from the cost-sharing agreement with Holy Spirit. The remaining amounts are now deferred through Schedule 2, as we previously discussed, which was about $37,000. So the total surplus at the end of the year in transportation was about $80,000 and will be used in the future years to support increased contract costs. System admin had a small surplus of about $95,000. And lastly, external services, it is the international program, which saw a surplus at the end of the year of $339,000. So these funds have been transferred to reserves for future use. Spending by program, so comparable with prior years, 81% was spent on instruction, 19% was spent on supports. And then the breakdown of expenditures shows that 79% was spent on staffing. Oops, got too excited there. There we go. 79% was spent on staffing, 16% was spent on services, supplies, and contracts, 5% was spent on amortization, and the remaining was on other expenses. For additional details, you can review your management discussion and analysis document, which will then be posted as well after online. And so overall, the division had an operating deficit of $1.32 million. The operating budget had been forecasted as a deficit of $1.66 million, so the division is under the budgeted deficit. So now we're just going to take a look at some financial health indicators. So these help measure how we compare to school divisions of similar size. Lethbridge School Division is compared to boards with 9,000 to 20,000 students. And then just also note that the divisions column will be 23-24, whereas the comparables will be 22-23. So just, that's the most recent information that we get from Alberta Education. So we'll start with the accumulated surplus from operations. Is higher than comparable divisions. However, as this number decreases, it hinders the division's ability to be flexible and to react to immediate or emergent needs. And to just compare with the comparable column, so last year, the division's ASO was 2.7%. Liquidity is measured by taking financial assets less financial liabilities. A ratio greater than 1 is desirable. This means that the division is able to pay its current liabilities as they come due. At year-end, the liquidity ratio is 1.06. However, if you take out the ARO liability, that ratio becomes 1.61, because if you look at the liability, there's no corresponding receivable. I won't get too technical. This decrease is expected as the division has spent some of its savings, therefore its cash is being decreasing. And just to compare with the comparable, the prior year, the ratio was 1.2 for Lethbridge School Division. Working capital per student is the amount of money available after discharging all the division's liabilities. And again, it just shows the division to meet emergent needs and provide new initiatives as the division continues to grow. This ratio is at $86, which is a large decrease from the prior year of $369. However, the average for all school divisions within Alberta in 22-23 was a negative $46. So that just kind of shows funding is not necessarily keeping up with student enrollment increases. Capital asset net book value compared to costs broken down for both buildings and equipment, and as well as vehicles. The percentage of the net book values to historical cost illustrates how new to the division's assets are. And then lastly, capital reserves per student assess how much money has been put aside into capital reserves for the future replacement of capital assets. Lastly, there's a significant amount of information in these 40 pages that are available for additional data, accountability, and transparency. There's 2 unaudited schedules as well that are within the financial statements. The first is a schedule of fee revenues, which provides information on the types of amounts of fees throughout the school division. The second unaudited schedule is a system administration, which provides details on the administrative costs and provides a breakdown of the many administrative areas throughout the division. One additional note that is typically beneficial is to indicate the amount of within the school generated funds, showing funding and amounts expended. At the end of the year, there was $3.19 million in unexpended SGF funds, including deferred revenue of about $105,000 and $3.09 million in accumulated surplus. And lastly, to just provide a bit more detail, there's infographics that have been created to provide for the division's 23-24 financial statement information. They include discussions throughout this presentation on enrollment, expenditures on operations and capital, and accumulated surplus and reserves. So I know I always like to talk too fast, but are there any questions? Oh, Christina.
Thank you, Avis. Christina.
Thank you so much. Always so good. And I'm always just like amazed. I don't know anything that's going on. You do, so that's good. So to help me better understand,
Yes.
I have a couple of questions. And Chair, you can stop me to pass me along if you want. But page 27 of the audit, I just have a question about the accounting changes coming up.
Oh, yes.
You've talked a number of times at our reports about the accounting changes that we've experienced over the last maybe 2 years, I'm not sure. And then there's some listed that are coming up. Can you tell me more about how that might impact? Because I think sometimes the challenges in us understanding or the public understanding the budget is like when the measuring changes.
Yes, and actually,
it's hard to
you
understand.
might be able to explain this a little bit more because I actually did a PSAS webinar this morning through BDO about about explaining how this is hopefully going to make the financial statements more user-friendly is kind of what the end goal is on that. There's a lot of things that are changing. This is going to come in to effect, like effective September 1st, 2026. So it'll change the main one, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, like it's going to change the statement of financial position of where things necessarily are. It's going to change the budget requirements. It's going to change a few other things. I know that I am going to steal something that he always used to say, is that when they give you a long time for when these accounting standards are going to happen, it means that there's going to be lots of work involved. Alberta Education has always been really helpful with providing guidance as well about these are their templates, so they'll help provide guidance on how these are going to look. But so that's kind of what's kind of coming down the pipeline there. Is there anything you want to add to that, or? It was helpful. I did that webinar this morning and I was like, oh yeah, okay.
Perfect. Yeah.
Future
So
me
the-
is going to have to figure this
Then
out.
you can provide the Avis interpretation. And I think, oh, sorry.
There were several changes that happened this year that we had to look at in the audit that was, kind of extra stuff, which is detailed on page 26. So there's a new revenue standard. So we had to look at the impact to see if that would change the timing of revenue recognition in the division, which there weren't any. Public-private partnerships, it's it's one of those complex standards like the ARO. That's a new standard. This Lethbridge School Division wasn't impacted by this standard, but there are a lot of school divisions that were impacted by this. And so we've had a lot of fun with those other school divisions dealing with that standard. And then the last one was this new purchased intangibles guideline. So.
Thank you. Yeah. So I think if you could, because you've done a good job the last couple of years with the ARO, telling us like when a number is different because of that. So I would just like keep that in mind for the future. That's been really valuable from my understanding, because sometimes the number from year to year isn't always apples and apples.
If something, yeah, if you were comparing with the prior year and like, why was that? Because most likely I would imagine last year we had to do a restatement on our 2022 because of the ARO. And I would assume as well with the framework, there would be that same restatement, I would think, with your comparable numbers. So we can just explain that. Absolutely. What a great question. Good.
Andrea.
Thank you, Kylie, Will, and Avis. And you always make it so understandable with your graphics. I appreciate that so much. I was wondering if you could explain more about the working capital per student at $86, having dropped from something in the
Absolutely.
300s.
Let me just go back to my notes there. So that's just, it's basically talking about our cash levels have decreased as well, while our enrollments have increased. So then there's less cash. Like if you do it working capital per student, so as our enrollment goes up, our cash goes down. That's why that number, oh, sorry, Christine.
Yeah, and if we did a significant draw on our reserves, so reserve funds add to our working capital because they're in cash. And when we've had to, over the last 2 years, really dip into our reserves in order to maintain our services and sports as we've grown, and yet the weighted moving average hasn't provided us money for every student in order to maintain those services and supports, we've made decisions to make sure that we're dipping into our reserves to account for that. And so that's why we've seen that working capital go right down.
It's an accumulative effect of the weighted moving average. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And just a quick reminder, but correct me if I'm wrong, Avis and Christine, because I might be wrong, but also part of the challenges related to reserve is we were mandated by the government to get our reserves down as well. So obviously we use those reserves to support operations. We might have used them regardless, but we were also, the expectation was we had to get them under
3.15 for last year, 22-23, 3.2 for 23-24, and now for 24-25, they have increased the limit to 6%.
Yes.
So we were forced into some decisions there.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. That was another, side reason.
But, and it's also, I guess, one other kind of item to mention. So you know that like our net financial asset position on page 3, so we're at 1.05 million. There are some school divisions that have a negative balance in there as well. So just to show that as well. Yeah, of course.
Christine.
Well, maybe, I know it wasn't mentioned, when we have the audit, sometimes there's recommendations in a management letter. Can you speak to what the findings were for the management letter for the school division as well as the school generated funds? I know the audit committee gets the pleasure of hearing about that, but we wanted you to hear because we're pretty excited this year about our results.
So the school division itself had no recommendations. You've got Avis and Christine at the helm, and they do a good job of making sure things are very well done when we come in to do our audit, which is very appreciated. It's nice to have an audit like that. So for SGF, we do have one item of note. So what happens is we usually look at five schools every year where we go. We look at different schools every year, and then we go in and we test certain tests on their funds, and we look at their controls over their cash and whatnot. And in our testing, there was one item. So during our revenue testing for the specific SGFs, selected, it was noted that the following school was not following protocol for using the cash envelopes for each event, including, and then it mentions which event it was. Want me to say which school? Okay. So the point is if cash is taken, cash is tough to control. So there's these envelopes that the school uses that tracks what the expected revenue is and then what the actual revenue is, and asks for an explanation about why if there's a variance, and if there's not a variance, then it's fine. So those envelopes are important when cash is being used to try and help us with completeness. Right, the cash that was received and deposited is the right number. So just one exception from that testing. Yeah, which is, as someone on the audit committee said, he was very impressed, because years ago that list was pretty high.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Tyler, as chair of the audit committee, do you have anything to share? Okay, perfect. Thank you. If there are no further comments, I am looking for a motion. Christina.
Sorry, I'm just gonna pull it up. I assume there's one. One second.
Just to approve it, just to approve the audited financial statement. So I move to approve the audited financial statements as presented.
Perfect. Thank you. Formally, I'll just read it off the sheet. It is recommended that the board approve the audited financial statements for the 2023-2024 fiscal year as presented.
That was pretty close.
All right. Excellent. Any further discussion? All in favor? And it's carried. Thank you. Thank you for all of your work to pursue and present the audit to us. Thank you very much. And thank you, Christine, for sacrificing your office for this team to do their great work.
And I do just want to big thank you to Avis and the finance team, because we wouldn't have such a great clean audit if it wasn't for their diligent work, the work at the schools as well. They do a lot of great work as well. And then really, yeah, Avis does the heavy lifting here on the audit. I get to sign the statements, which is awesome. So do you, so does Mike. And but we don't have to do the work, so it's great. So thank you. And they're a work of art.
Thank you. Of course. Yep. All right, we will now move, we're jumping all over today. We're moving to 9.8, enrollment growth follow-up. Mike.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I think we'll do 9.8, 10.1, and then come back to 9.7.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Okay, 9.8, and that's enrollment growth follow-up. And this comes from a motion that was presented by Andrea last May, and it says, subject to the enrollment contingency of $754,000 being allocated classroom teachers and educational assistants if enrollment projections are met by September 30th, that the instructional expenditures and transfers be approved. So this was essentially, we had about $754,000 in contingency, and I'm going to explain this, but Avis will provide more detail. Because what we're doing is we just did the audited financial statements, so 23-24, and now we're talking about 24-25, what happened last spring, and then where are we now? And so this just kind of ties a loop on that motion that Andrea put together, and also gives you an update, most of which you're already aware of, but just maybe a finer point. I'm going to talk at 30,000 foot level, and then Avis will certainly provide more details. So as you, in relation to this motion, as you know, we didn't hit our enrollment growth projections. So that 754,000 was not available for us to use because of that. So we just wanted to make sure that we tied that loop on and made sure that that was clear. So our enrollment did go up, but not by the amount that we thought. And then you'll see the way enrollment's calculated. We hit the $1,500 mark instead of the $4,000, and then there's some money other places because we didn't have in our enrollment that's going to be clawed back. So you know all of this, but it's just important to make sure that we're clear on that as well. A little bit of new information that Avis will have in her report is that, even this year, even though we didn't hit our enrollment projections, we still have approximately 85 students that aren't funded in the division that we're serving. And that number goes up every day because kids arrive into our schools, which that's just the way it goes. As well, another thing I want to make sure, what I did was I looked back at last year on this November report because I wanted to be able to articulate to you a little bit the changes in staffing. Remember, staffing levels fluctuate throughout the year. They go up and down. So a lot of what you have to do is compare a snapshot on this day and these conditions to the snapshot the year before. So one of the things I did is I just looked back at the November report that Avis did last year versus now and what were our numbers. And so last year, our teacher FTE at this time in this report was 664. You'll see in the current report, the numbers might change before the end of the year, but right now we're at 671 FTE. So an increase of 7. You'll see some minuses in the teacher FTE because we had some contingency set aside, but because we didn't hit our enrollment, we didn't use it. But I just wanted to remind you that we did go up by 7 compared to last year, which we knew because our enrollment continues to grow. And also we're still trying to catch up from the previous years. So that's important to remember. The other thing is for support staff, last year in this report, the number was 464. That number is now 492. So that's an increase of 28. About 12 of that is Jordan's principal, and the other 16 is staffing that we put in, recognizing that we need to have more support staff in our schools. So just wanted to make sure you were aware of those things. The other thing is Christine and I, when we were up at ASBA and on the drive back, I was driving, Christine was working on a letter. We do have some suggestions for advocacy related to funding that we think are going to be timely. So we will be sharing that with the board here soon to say, here's a bit of a game plan for how we can address this, because we we know that many school divisions are in the same boat as us, that their projections were up here and they were a little bit lower, but we're still trying to catch up from the previous years. We think that as the government looks at funding in the WMA, there's some opportunities to say, here's an issue that you should address, and we think there's some opportunity for maybe other boards to collaborate as well. So just so you know, that's in the works, and we'll be sending that off to you here soon to get your feedback and perspective. We know this board is passionate about advocating, so we just want to give you some information to advocate for that we think is timely. So with that, we'll have Avis. I mean, if you have specific questions for me, that's fine, but Avis will probably be able to answer them in more detail, and we can certainly turn it over to her.
Perfect, thank you.
Nope.
So yeah, so,
Sorry, Avis. Allison just raised, no, you're good. Allison just raised her hand. Allison, go ahead.
5 o'clock public forum time.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone online for public forum? No? Seeing none, we will continue on. Thank you. Go ahead, Ava.
Perfect. Thank you. So yeah, so we're going to switch gears. We just finished talking about 2023, 2024, and now we're going to focus on 2024, 2025. And so I'm pleased to present this operating budget update. So like Mike, oh, hang on. What's going on? How to get rid of that? That's okay. We can fix that. All right, so yes, just a reminder that this is an update to the preliminary budget that was developed and approved in May 2024. This budget is updated for the September 30th enrollment counts and any other updated information that has occurred since May of 2024. So the operating or September 30th budget, however you hear it discussed, takes the preliminary budget of $150.1 million, 150 of revenues, which includes 1.24 million of reserves, and adds the updated information for the fall of 24-25. So this includes a decrease in enrollment growth funding throughout the budget of approximately $472,000. In the preliminary budget, the enrollment growth funding had been held back and was not allocated in case the enrollment numbers were not met. And so as a result, this proved to be correct, and as a result of less than estimated growth, the division is no longer eligible for this funding. It had been put in the preliminary budget as a placeholder for approximately 5 FTE teachers. So you'll see that later in the presentation, but just again to reiterate, those positions had not been filled. Basically, if you have revenues, you need to have an offsetting expense for the budget to balance. So there were I've got good news though. There were other targeted funds that were announced and allocated over the summer. This includes $50,000 for dual credit, $65,000 for the mental health pilot program to complete for the remainder of the school year, and approximately $268,000 in new curriculum, which will be spent on both professional learning and resources. There's an increase in the mental health capacity building grant from the City of Lethbridge of approximately $18,450. This will help with supporting the increased costs of running these programs. Jordan's principal funding that was not spent in 23-24 has been adjusted to reflect the amounts deferred to 24-25 of about $200,000, and the majority of this funding is for educational assistance. And lastly, there was an increase of $145,000 in reserve allocation from the preliminary budget, and this mostly includes any amounts at year end that have been put in. We call them like year-end commitments. So things have been ordered, things have been just haven't arrived yet necessarily. So they have it's a timing issue. So that's where we kind of capture those. The use of reserves is 98% within instruction and 2% within plant operations and maintenance, about $24,000, which will be used to address cost pressures due to funding challenges. So when we combined the 150.1 million and the 284,000 in funding updates, we get 150.39 for the 24-25 operating budget. So then this chart shows the overall for all the different revenue allocations and how they've changed from the preliminary and then to compare from last year for the 23-24 operating budget. And so how all these are going to be spent is 77% is within staffing. So that 5 that we talked about is that placeholder. That, just to reiterate, these have not been filled. And the 4 FTE increase in support staff is mainly the Jordan's Principle deferred funding from May to September. And so then just a bit more on the reserves. These have mainly have stayed, all of these have stayed the same from the preliminary. The only one that's changed is the school-based reserve amount. But the remainder is the 272 in inclusive learning to support staff for EAs. 400,000 for West Cooley Station for purchasing resources for the school opening in September 2025. Early learning allocated 312,000 for supporting staffing and maintaining programs. And then the last one that's new would be the 121, and that's the school-based reserves, because we never know those in May. We don't know those till September, October, when the school year is finished. And so those are used, being used for staffing, supplies, and equipment. And then there would have been a document within your agenda that gives a bit more detail if you just can't get enough budget fund. And it will be on the website tomorrow. So are there any questions?
Thank you, Avis. Does anyone have any questions for Avis? Jenny.
Thank you, Avis. Thank you for the report and for your previous presentation as well. My question is, those school-based reserves, are those, the usage of those funds, is that school level decisions or are those division directed decisions?
They're school-based decisions. I usually meet with, when we release the budgets to the principals, they have about a 2-week window, and I meet with most of them and we talk about the year that was and the year that we're in now, and then if there's any requests, then we put those into the budget. You bet.
Any other questions? Andrea.
Thanks again for making that so understandable. The money that Mike talked about, the 754,000 for not making our enrollment, that's different than the 472. Is that right, or is that
472 is part of it?
That's part of it. Okay.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know. I didn't know if it was
you
that
bet. Yes.
That.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes me feel better.
You bet.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Tina, can I please see
sorry.
Tyler and Craig? No, it's all good. Jenny, go ahead.
Just to follow up Andrea's question, the remainder of that money, does it remain in reserves?
So how it'll, like, Christine's very good at explaining this as a cash flow exercise, is that, so we started in May here, this was our funding. Then when they announced in July that extra enrollment funding, but then we're kind of back where we started. But then we are going to receive that cash in the 24-25 school year. However, for the 25-26 school year, they will take it off of that funding. So we don't want to spend it because basically we more or less have to pay it back. So that's why we've calculated, we've calculated kind of what to hold back to make sure.
No, we put it in deferred revenue because it's a commitment. So the government gives us a funding commitment. So when we, for instance, when we do our budget in May and the government gets our enrollment, they give us a funding commitment for X number of dollars that say you will get this money in the next school year. Whether you're up or down, that is your commitment. When they did the new announcement in July and gave out the new money for growth, of course they were basing it on our projections, and so again that went up and said, here's your funding commitment. So we are given that money in this school year. However, when September 30th comes and we don't meet the target that they gave us the funding commitment on, what they do is they pull that money back in the following school year. So yes, we have the money sitting in our bank account, but they're going to pull it off next year. So you have 2 choices. You can spend it now, and then you're starting in a deficit when you do your next year's budget, or you hold it back to pay back, and then when you start your next budget, you're clean, you're clear. You're just working with the dollars that you're going to have. So it's a cash flow exercise. And it's complicated, as you can appreciate. But if we didn't hold it back, that would cause future problems versus dealing with our issues now and running with it.
Thank you. Jenny?
Thank you, Christine. In understanding that further, so this is the first year for the 2024-2025 year that we have seen a little bit of a different pattern in our enrollment growth. And so is this the first time that, like, next year they're going to claw that back, or is this a pattern over the last 4 or 5 years?
Well, actually, and Avis will correct me if I'm wrong, in our first year of doing this under the new model, actually, we were in a clawback position, but COVID hit. And so what they do is they held boards harmless and said, we are not pulling that money back. So we technically would have had to pay it back, and we didn't. So that during COVID, because enrollment went across the board, all boards experienced that, right? Our project enrollment dropped, and so they held boards harmless, and so you were allowed to keep and use that. Then when we came out of COVID, we're back under the new regime of the old regime of running, where they'll claw it back, or you get it back the next year. Same thing as if we were last year, our actual September 30th were over budget. So we actually got that little bit extra in this year, which we of course added into our budget right at the hopper, because that was extra money we were getting as an adjustment in this year. So it's always a year behind, which is very difficult for planning and budgeting. I mean, well, you know what it is, but it is still difficult. I hope that explains it.
Yeah, and then when they provide, like, we get the funding invoice or whatever, say it's this would be for next year, so for 25-26, say it's $1 million, but then they'll say clawback amount, and they'll have calculated that amount that they'll take off before, because they're like, well, we've already given you this funding. Yeah.
Any other questions for Avis? Okay. Oh, Jenny?
If this is the appropriate time to ask, I'm turning myself off. I do have a little bit of, I have a question that is more specific to something that came out of Christine's report rather than necessarily what you just shared with us. And that's just, we're looking for a little bit of clarification. And Christine suggested that maybe when we had you in the room, we could ask you a little bit about, and so correct me if this is not the appropriate time to ask this. But we're just asking the question around we've done this shift of the centralized bank account for the school generated funds. And so with that, we recognize, and we've heard some feedback from some of our school councils who previously had perhaps had societies or are looking for clarification on their bank accounts. And so we are looking for some clarification on understanding how that movement from school generated funds into a centralized bank account, how that affects specifically the school bank accounts. Because from my understanding, previously, some of our schools operated in a way where the school had a separate account for just that school council.
And that hasn't changed, just to confirm, so prior to, sorry to cut you off, but prior to the change, they would have had a school bank account at school X. Elementary school X would have had their school generated fund bank account of $10,000. Within there would have been the school council amount in there, and it's tracked separately within KEV, which is our school cash online software. So of that 10,000, 1,000 would have been tracked separately. That hasn't changed. None of that has changed. Just instead of the one bank account, it's now, or one bank account per school, it's now just one bank account per all elementary schools, but it's still being tracked. Yes, the reporting hasn't changed.
Thank you for clarifying
Yeah,
that.
you bet.
Reporting hasn't changed. What about the accessibility for those school councils? Can you I'm just anticipating questions, and so wanting to just be as informed as possible. Can you kind of walk me through a little bit what that process looks like for parents that belong to that council that are going to use some of this funds or are looking for reimbursements? Say they go out and buy stuff for hot lunch and then they need to be reimbursed, and just kind of how that process,
so
access to that works.
That process hasn't changed because all of those payments would have been coming from the operating here anyway. No schools were writing checks to parent A for reimbursement of lodge. It all would have come through centrally. Yes, so that part hasn't changed. It would just be the main thing that's changed, instead of having to do 24 or right now 15 separate bank accounts or bank reconciliations monthly, now it's just one, I would say the main difference. And that's all being tracked. Each school got deposit slips with their location code on it. They submit, the admin assistant submits the documents to our school accounting coordinator, and she keeps track of that. It now, instead of having to wait for our two computer, like School Cash Online, to talk to ADW, which is our operating software, it now automatically does. So it's just kind of cleaning up those few things in that regards. Yeah, of course.
Sorry, I'm just trying to fully understand this. So if the school council wants to access some of their funds, say they decide they're gonna buy books for the library or shelves for the gym or something, is the process still the same for them to access their own bank account, or do they now go through somebody at the division?
No, they would still go through the admin assistant at the school.
So very little change to the
In that,
actual usage.
absolutely.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, yeah.
Thank
bet.
you.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Avis, for your report. Oh, Christina.
Sorry, I had one, I just
Okay.
wanted to point out from the budget update piece. I just wanted to point out page 20 in your budget update document. No questions, but just for the public. It is where you very nicely list all of where some of the spending has gone to different board priorities. And because we recently spoke about the assurance results, I just wanted to point that out about some of the actions that are being resourced for those priorities. So thank you for including that page.
Thank you, Christina, for that. All right, thank you. Thank you for your report and for joining us. Great. We will, where are we? Oh, we're going back up to Mike, 9.7, grade configuration follow-up. Thanks, Avis.
Okay, yeah, thanks for this. Just to follow up, in September, at the September board meeting, Trustee Jenny Steed presented a motion that the board have us provide information pertaining to grade configuration, report back to the board at the November Committee of the Whole meeting. We did discuss it, and we did provide some information at the November Committee of the Whole meeting, so just wanted to close the loop a little bit on that. And then the sort of consensus was that we would ask the School Boundary Alignment Committee to continue some work looking at grade configuration, that sort of thing. Also want to make sure that people watching, the public, understand it's in here, but I'll just add to it again, that it doesn't mean that anything's imminent in terms of changes. It means that we're doing our due diligence, and the board is very interested in having these conversations, looking at the way that we do things, and are there things that we can do better, change, et cetera, and that's what this is about. And then, you know, if it does get some momentum and the board wants to have a more in-depth look at it, then yes, certainly we would, you know, do some stakeholder engagement, that sort of thing. And if the board decides that, you know, we don't want to look at it in depth at this point, then that's fine. But right now it's sort of been put to the School Boundary Alignment Committee, so we can do a little more work and maybe make some recommendations back to the board, that sort of thing. So just want to make sure that, one, we close the loop on that publicly, and two, just to, because, you know, sometimes when people hear grade configuration, they start to go, what's going on and are we making changes? And certainly it would be preliminary to make any of those assumptions at this point. Of course, as always, if trustees have a different perspective than me, feel free to share it, but I'm seeing some nods around the room, so I think we're in the same page in that regard. That's it for me, unless there's questions or comments.
Jenny.
I did have a question. The Boundary Alignment Committee, how often is that regular? Do you have regular meetings, or is that one, how often does that committee meet? Is that scheduled? No. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Now we are on to board chair report. I have one item, 11.1, Team Lethbridge. On November 5th to 7th, Mike and I got on a bus with 49 other team member participants and drove up to Edmonton for 2.5 days of meetings with ministers and MLAs. And it was a really good time to connect with leaders within our community to capture and showcase Lethbridge as a city and how we can be a hub for solutions and piloting to the provincial government. And on the memo that I put into the agenda, I listed the ministers that we were able to meet with. Minister of Service Alberta and Red Tape Reduction, I just want to say Honorable Dale Nally, that is where I held the conversation around our assessment survey. And he will be passing that on to the appropriate people. So we shall see where that ends, or lands, I should say. But that conversation was held. I was also able to meet with the Minister Nicolaides, Minister of Education, and we had a really great conversation around trades, dual credit, the opportunity to bring more trades and trade spaces into the schools where students are. We spoke to how the collegiates are an excellent partnership, but they're one step in a bigger plan, I think. And so how can we bring trades into the schools to give more students opportunities? Also spoke to our kindergarten. I did present the kindergarten proposal to the minister. And what else? And did extend bouquets around the cell phone policy, the school construction accelerator program, and revisiting the weighted moving average. Yes, and invitations or recommendations from ministers to extend invitations to significant events should they be in town and they would like to attend. Is there anything you wanted to add about your trip to Team Lethbridge? You don't need to, but.
No,
yeah.
I'll add just a little bit, but not too much. Certainly similar experience. It was very positive, deeply appreciative to the folks who organized the trip, to the MLAs. We had an opportunity to meet with elected officials from both parties, and that was very helpful and very much appreciated. And what we emphasized in our meetings with the ministers that I was in is, how this all relates to education, and each of these portfolios do, because education touches just about everything. And again, just that reminder of how much we cooperate in Lethbridge and how much opportunity there is here, and certainly government officials were appreciative of that. So.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions around that? Andrea.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for your advocacy around the September assessments in the kindergarten program. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, we will move on to 12.2, appointment of returning officer 2024 election.
Okay, thank you very much. So back in September, the board passed bylaw 2024-01 to authorize Lethbridge School Division to enter into an agreement to hold a joint election in conjunction with the city of Lethbridge. What that means is the city of Lethbridge runs the election for us, which we're absolutely grateful and appreciative, because it's a complicated and a very expensive venture. So we do appreciate that. One of the tasks that we've been asked to do is make sure that the Board of Trustees appoint a returning officer. That is a requirement on the Municipal Government Act. And so the returning officer for the City of Lethbridge is Bonnie Hilford. And so I would recommend that the board approve the returning officer for the City of Lethbridge be appointed for the returning officer for the purposes of the 2025 School Board Trustee election. So.
Thank you, Christine. Can I have someone move the motion, please? Jenny.
I move that Bonnie Hilford, returning officer for the City of Lethbridge, be appointed as the returning officer for the purposes of the 2025 School Board Trustee election.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And now we'll move on to 12.3, Policy Advisory Committee, Terms of Reference.
The memo is there and the the recommended changes to the terms of reference is attached. If you have questions, I may get Mike to speak on it because he was more part of supporting that while I was away in October, but there were some changes and we have reviewed them with the committee and all were in favor. Just generally some language cleanup and making them more, like removing dates and confirming the language in terms of what type of information comes to the board, what information goes to the committee, etc. Clarifying the language.
Perfect. Thank you, Christina. Craig? Go ahead.
Thanks, Craig. And I agree, certainly the board's responsibility to develop policies. The word development there is still linked to advise on development. In the case that, for example, the board identified a new policy that we wanted to develop, if it still was applicable in the case of the policy advisory committee, we would still send it to them for advisement, even if we were just developing it rather than just amending an old one. The amendment and development helps cover the board's review of existing or development of new policies. So I'd like to keep both amendment and development in, given that the purpose limits the committee's scope to advising.
And I would agree with that. I think the word advise sets the context for development. It's not coming up with new apart from the board. It would be sent to the committee as per board motion and direction to provide impact and seek stakeholder feedback. So I would be comfortable with keeping that in. I'd prefer to keep it in. Are there any other comments? Okay. I am in need of someone to put forward the motion, please. Yeah, you can.
So I move that the board approve the revised terms of reference for the policy advisory committee as presented.
Thank you, Christina. Any further comments? Those in favor? Those opposed? Craig Whitehead is opposed. Thank you. It is carried. All right, we are on to division highlights. It's been a full month, so let's go around and share the things we've been able to see and participate in. I'll start with online. Craig or Tyler, do you have anything to share with us? Thank you, Craig. Allison, do you have anything to share?
Yep.
So division highlight for me is hearing the excitement this weekend for our LCI girls volleyball team. It was, my understanding is the first time in their history of LCI that the women have won provincials for volleyball. So huge congratulations and shout out to them. And last month I brought forward one of our students that has an exhibit in the GALT in regards to skateboarding. This month I need to bring forward that esports is highlighted and our division is highlighted in the Galt Museum. So I think that that's pretty exciting and great to have us out in the community for people to know, understand, and hear about the highlights of our division. And then the last thing just to highlight is the Trades for You, which is happening tomorrow night, to know that the number of businesses that have stepped forward, to know that all of the local spots were scooped up pretty quick for our students, as well as obviously other divisions were able to take those spots, but it is definitely much needed event for our students to have those opportunities in our business community. So a huge shout out to all of our students as well as their families that are going to get them there, and then our business community that's ensuring these opportunities exist. So thank you.
Thanks, Allison. Jenny, do you have anything to share?
Yes, I will highlight some of the things that I heard when I attended one of my liaison schools this year is Agnes Davidson. And some of the things that I heard there I think are worth highlighting. They represent not just the work being done at Agnes, but work that reflects things being done in all of our schools across our division. And so I think they're worth noting. I was impressed by the efforts that are being made to connect with community and to teach our students about leadership and about awareness of others and about service to others. And some of the things that they were highlighting in their upcoming schedule, they included a holiday market that they held on a Saturday. And so that meant that our students and our staff and the people of our division were coming in on their day off, and they were doing extra work to raise money for a purpose. They also had a bake sale where they had a goal for their grade 5 students. They bring in their baking and they have their grade 5 bake sale, and it's a much anticipated sale in the year, and they raise money for an individual that lives in Honduras, that they're able to send that money to, and that collectively as a community they work toward this goal and become aware of somebody who has a need that they are able to join together in assisting in that need and become aware of the world around them, and as well as the community around them as they hold this bake sale. And from what I hear, community members come to the bake sale, and I was cautioned that I'm only allowed to buy so much because it's a hot commodity over there. And also they were anticipating their upcoming clothing drive. They were gathering winter gear for members of our community in need as well. And I was impressed by the work that is being done, not just to benefit their own school community, but the communities around them, both globally and locally. And it's work that I've seen as I've been a liaison in different schools and in my own kids' schools. And I just thought it was worth highlighting that impressive life skills that we're teaching our students and that are being supported by our staff.
Great. Thank you so much, Jenny. Andrea.
Require reading glasses. I got out to Galbraith and McNaughton Horse and Wilson and General Stewart for their really fun Halloween activities and got to all of their council meetings. And I wanted to give a big thank you to Galbraith, Senator Buchanan and Proby for the wonderful early years drawings that they provided to us to take to the Alberta School Board Association FGM, where they were well received. I also attended a beautiful Remembrance Day ceremony at Wilson. The whole student body was so respectful, and I loved getting to sit with Andrew in his class.
Thank you, Andrea. Christina.
I want to highlight post-secondary fair that happened this past week with career transitions, not formally part of our division, but certainly closely aligned, and a great opportunity for many of our students to engage with post-secondary opportunities. In particular, this one was special because it was post-secondary institutions, not just from Alberta, but from all over. So great chance to meet and have families start to map out next steps. I know a lot of students that I've talked to recently are like grad is feeling very close all of a sudden. January feels really real. So looking forward to the last part of the year for our grade 12s and their next steps in their journey. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. For me, I was fortunate enough to be able to attend 2 Remembrance Day ceremonies. I attended Gilbert Patterson as well as LCI, and the students did an incredible job creating a moving experience to reflect and remember on that day. I was also able to attend Hive Night number 2, Builder Bees at Plaxton. It was a really great event, and it was a buzz. It really was. And there was high attendance and just a really great energy. And it was just really great to go around into all of the classrooms and see teachers engaging with the parents and the students showcasing their work and just the building of that community. And I was able to hold some conversations around just assessment and relationship and just the value of these nights on top of report cards and what that all looks like and how people are excited to move forward just with a deeper understanding of what's happening in the schools. I think parents are thrilled to be in the buildings and meeting the community of teachers. And so kudos to Plaxton team for putting on a successful event on that evening. All right, we are now moving on to information items. 14.1, Craig, PSBAA. Thank you, Craig. Are there any questions for Craig? Okay, seeing none, we will keep on going. 14.2, Christmas season event schedule. The schedule is there in the agenda. So hopefully you will each be able to make it out to at least some of your liaison school events. If not more, there's lots happening in this holiday season. 14.3, community engagement. Andrea.
Thank you. So we had a great meeting and we reflected on community conversations, which happened so well over the past 3 years and were appreciated as happening on the north side, the west side, the south side. We brainstormed how to move forward with community conversations. And we had a parent in attendance, Gurpreet Singh, and he had a good idea to perhaps meet up with existing community groups as a way to have outreach in the community. So for example, with the Sikh Society or the BIPOC Society. And so I wanted to bring that to the board to see if there's any appetite for that, for reaching out to existing community groups and liaising with them to have a meeting to get their feedback for us. So I'll throw that open.
Thank you, Andrea. And also to add to context to the conversation, he also brought up this this idea as an opportunity to reach out to a stakeholder community that we don't often connect with. So that was also behind that intention as well. Yeah. Any questions or comments for Andrea? Allison.
So seeing that this is that you would bring this idea forward to the board, I think that having these opportunities is absolutely important as a community engagement opportunity, but I do see that that would be different than community conversations. The intent of community conversation was definitely different than what the intent of this sounds like. And when community conversations was put as a strategy within our assurance plan, it was put in with a different opportunity where people have opportunity to come and have conversation that isn't topic led. So I think that this is a great opportunity to have community engagement, but I do see it as different.
Thank you, Allison. Any other comments on that? Craig. Thank you, Craig. Any other comments? Craig, is your hand up again? Oh, okay, not up again. Okay. Mike. Okay. Andrea, I'm on the ball.
Thank you for your feedback. And just looking around the room, is it something that you would like our committee to pursue, to approach an existing community group and see if this is something they would like to do with us, to have a meeting? Wouldn't necessarily have to have a topic of conversation, but just we would be there. Would you like to chat with us?
I'm seeing nods and thumbs up. Okay, so we will send this back to the Community Engagement Committee to have further conversation. We've heard at the table it's not the original intent of community conversations, as well as feedback that there may need to be a reassessment of sorry, my glasses are off. Wow. Of the effectiveness of community conversations. So perhaps that's a fuller conversation we can have as a board at a committee of the whole meeting. We can hold that space. But right now, I think we can go back to the Community Engagement Committee and pursue that plan, and we can decide, we can move forward of whether it will be an actual community conversations or something else. We can continue to feel that out. Okay. All right. Anything else, or was that all, Andrea?
The meeting is December 16th. I know that those minutes said December 4th, but when the ATA has their Christmas dinner. We polled everybody and moved it to the 16th. So thank you.
Perfect, thank you. All right, next is our Joint City School Boards Committee. The report is in there, so I know you've read it, but what I wanted to add, we had an excellent conversation with Councillors Schmidt-Rempel and Parker about maintaining the Joint City School Boards Committee, as well as the other items listed within the agenda, within the memo. What I did want to add to follow up with is at the November 12th council meeting, Councillor Jen Schmidt-Rempel brought forward a summary of the joint meeting, as long as the recommendations that she would be bringing to the SPC. So increased number of meetings, as well as consensus around the need for a committee to continue and shared ideas of advocacy. And also within our joint city, she is going to be moving that it become an official committee of council. It's not an official committee of council. So she will be moving for that to happen. And so as well as for reports to be brought forward to council. So that is going to be taken to the SPC on December 17th. So I just wanted to update you with the movement of that. Any questions? Allison.
I have a question not on that item, but on the election piece where it says guaranteed results will not be received on election night. Counting will begin the day after election.
Yes.
Can you talk a bit more about that?
Oh, yep, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can talk about that. So David Sarsfield, who's the deputy returning officer, who will be, he's kind of our point person with related to the election, informed us because they have to move to hand ballots, that, and it's going to take days to count those results. They will not be starting that evening because you've got to have people who are fresh. I guess the ballots are very complicated because you can vote, one person can vote up to, right? So for trustee, for instance, you can vote for one person, you can vote for 7 people or somewhere in between. And so that is and that's the same with council and that sort of thing. And so it's a very complicated hand counting process versus the machine tabs that used to do. And so they said in all likelihood they will not start that night. They will start the next day, and it could take a significant amount, not weeks. Weeks is probably an exaggeration, but it could take several days for them to count to get an official result. So we won't have it that night like we normally do, or an idea that night, or early the next day. It's going to take a few days, which causes complications when you talk about orientations and things like that, which we'll have to take into account in the future. But
so then I would request for some formal information in regards to how the announcement of those results would be provided, so that that information is public and that it's not going to change depending on the number of ballots, that it is set and that is knowledgeable to everybody.
And that information is going to be coming out. David is working on it, and that's going to be part of the conversation of our next joint city meeting. So the plan, as my understanding is, everything will be communicated and out by January 1st. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, there is no public forum response. Attached is the amended letter sent to members of council regarding advocacy for the joint committee. Continuing is attached, and we are at the end of our meeting. So I will adjourn us at 5:49.
Won't adjourn us. We have to move into camera.
We need to, I won't adjourn us. I will move us into in camera.
Do we need, because we're going in camera, do we need to extend the meeting past 6 or no?
Yep. Do we? Even for in camera? Okay, can I have a motion to extend the meeting past 6, please? Christina, thank you. All in favor? Okay, so carried. And can I have a motion to move us in camera, please? Andrea, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Andrea, move the motion. All in favor? We'll get it together. Perfect. Thank you. It's carried.